but they came and they started. I literally thought I was about to call 911. I thought I was being the victim of a road rage moment.
Could you confirm what kind of car was driving Solis Monday afternoon? That Mercedes? That police said?
I'm not going to go into that.
Do you think you have a conflict of interest? You said you've known Mr. Solis since he was a baby. They are obviously very close to Sergeant Rios. Do you think that's a conflict for you?
Well, I mean, it's conceivable. When I say I've known him, I've seen him like 3 or 4 times, but I first met him when he was an infant. I've known his family. We've never shared dinner or anything like that, but who knows? Maybe I do.
I mean, you obviously are going to have to go to trial, and you can't stand there and tip your hand. But can you give us an idea? Is it that they've got the wrong person, or the circumstances are not what the
circumstances are radically wrong?
Mr. Solis was there, but what you say or he says happened is the complete opposite of what the police say?
Well, I'm not going to say that everything is the complete opposite. I'm going to say that their conclusions, without evidence, are radically wrong.
That they've mischaracterized what's happened.
Completely. And they wouldn't have any way of knowing yet. They don't have any witnesses. But they shouldn't be concluding. They should be investigating.
Their press release, to be clear, does say that they do have witnesses, but we don't know what they have witnessed.
I kind of think I know what that is, but those witnesses have nothing to do with, they have no knowledge, or at least they have shared with me, that they have no knowledge of how this started, how it escalated. They have no knowledge of where.
Oh, HPD has told you that they have no knowledge.
Law enforcement has, yes. Okay. What they do have are seen witnesses for the final moments.
The final moments. So you're saying, did your client shoot Sergeant Rios, but you're saying that he shouldn't be convicted of murder for that shooting?
I am saying that if there is ever a conviction of murder here, it's just dead wrong.
Are you talking about final moments at the motel,
yeah,
or prior?
At the motel. That's where they have their witnesses.
Thank you.
Anything else? Salud.
Thank you.
Did Soph go inside?
No, she ran off down the street.
Oh, you know what? I had one more, but it doesn't have to be on camera.
Well, we were just showing you that full press conference there out of Houston, in which Paul Looney, that's Robert Solis' attorney, who Solis has been charged with murder in the death of Sergeant Sean Rios, that Houston police sergeant, just on Tuesday. So we were listening to his attorney talk to the press, talk to reporters, and say that he doesn't trust the Houston Police Department and its chief to carry out an unbiased investigation into the case. He's now asking that another agency, like a state agency like the Texas Rangers or Harris County Sheriff's Office, investigates the case instead. So we want to kind of take you over to another case that we've been following out of D.C., out of Washington, D.C., in which you'll remember, I believe we showed you once before here on NewsNOW about this case of this man killed in this moped crash after D.C. police were allegedly pursuing this moped, and that caused the death of 20-year-old Karen Hilton Brown, who was killed in that moped crash last month, after, like I said, being chased by D.C. police. His father spoke out today to reporters and says he wants justice. So let's listen in to his father's statement from earlier today.
My name is Malik Shabazz. It's spelled M-A-L-I-K S-H-A-B-A-Z-Z. M-A-L-I-K S-H-A-B-A-Z-Z. B-A-Z-Z. I am an attorney, and I am here to help the father and the family of Kyron Hilton Brown. That is the purpose here. I have his father, Mr. Charles Brown, here. I have aunts, family members, and I have organizers who have been out on the streets nightly helping to pursue justice in this case. Okay? And so, again, I'm here as a police abuse attorney, an attorney that fights police cases across this country in at least 12 federal jurisdictions. And I am here to say that Mr. Brown has an attorney. And Kyron Hilton's father, that I am his attorney, and I am here to investigate and to help pursue justice on behalf of him and the family for certainly the unnecessary death of Kyron Hilton Brown. His death is completely unnecessary, and it should not have happened. And it has happened because the Metropolitan Police Department and the District of Columbia does not follow its own policies. Kyron is dead today because the Metropolitan Police Department and the District of Columbia and the police chief do not train or supervise their officers properly, and they violate their own policy, and therefore Kyron Hilton is dead. And that's why these organizers are in the streets, and that's why they're fighting, and that's why his dad is upset, and family is upset, and that's why I'm here to help them. And you'll hear from them in just a few moments. Okay, so what policy, what procedure? It is the pursuit procedures of the Metropolitan Police Department. It is the hot pursuits, or what they call hot pursuits, police chases inside of the district, and they can be very, very dangerous, as we see. These chases are dangerous, and therefore the District of Columbia long ago, over 17 years ago, laid the base for its current policies. And the policy is that you are not to chase suspects or potential suspects unless you have reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a felony has been committed. Now, Kyron here was not caught with any drugs on him. He was not caught with a weapon on him. He had nothing illegal on him. And we are, as we've been told, he has been stopped for a violation for a helmet violation, which is a mere traffic citation. And therefore, the officers were wrong in pursuing him and chasing him and basically being the causative factor behind his death. They never should have pursued him. They knew not to pursue him. This is long-standing policy, and they should not have been chasing him for a helmet violation, which is a mere traffic citation. It's nowhere near a felony. This policy here and the policy of the Metropolitan Police Department says that you have to have what they call probable cause, and they say reasonable cause, that a felony has been committed before you are to get out here, start chasing, driving fast in these tight neighborhoods and injuring or killing people. It's happened in the past, and it's happened in this case. And I say that it happens in this case because the mayor and the police chief have failed to adequately supervise their officers. We hear a lot of lip service. We hear talk about Black Lives Matter. We hear talk about we're going to hold police accountable. But I can tell you that this case is only representative of the real, true policy of the District of Columbia when it comes to its police officers. it's lip service and politics on one hand, and it's support the police by any means necessary when it gets down to the real legal business of this matter. What am I saying? The attorneys for the District of Columbia, the people that the residents of the District of Columbia have elected as the Attorney General, and those that are supposed to fight for the residents of the district, when parents and representatives of persons who have been killed by District of Columbia police officers, when they try to seek justice on behalf of the deceased, or when persons in the district, citizens who are alive, who pay taxes, who vote, when they are accosted or abused or have their constitutional rights violated by the police department, when they encounter this district government, they don't encounter a attorney general and a mayor's office that says we are going to support and be fair with the victim. The policy of this city and these attorneys and in this city is they beat the hell out of the plaintiff. The person that is the victim or who has died or who is the victim of the crime, the District of Columbia fights with all of its might to dismiss or destroy their case, no matter how obvious the violation is. And that's the real problem here. It's political talk on one hand, but when it comes to actually enforcing this and make sure Officer Sutton is not out there really doing what he's not supposed to do, the training is lax. The supervision is lax. It's lip service, but on the other hand, it's get the victim. Go right ahead, ma'am.
No, I'm good.
Okay, and so that's my opening statement. I want to thank. First of all, let me just clarify again. So again, I'm here on behalf of the father and the family, and I'm opening up a legal investigation in this case. Black Lawyers for Justice, which is represented from this office, we are here to help and assist the family here. And we're going to pursue an investigation and maybe litigation down the line. But we want to know here, what is the mayor and what is the Attorney General of this city's true policy towards the citizens and the residents of the district? It's not Black Lives Matter. It's not holding police accountable. Their true policy is support the police by any means necessary and attack the victim by any means necessary, and then give a different message to the public. But that is not working anymore. Now, I'm here not only with the father, but other activists who are the reason why I'm here.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to interrupt you real quick.
Karen, no.
Because speaking on behalf of the family, I'm Karan's mother.
Karen,
I don't know when you or the father collaborated this. Again, I have no say in this. The father cannot speak on the behalf of Karan. He cannot. So like you said, I support the police and everything, but as far as you open an investigation and things that you're doing, no. You understand? That's not for you to do. The father has no right. Like I said, did the father speak on Karan?
Okay.
Did the father tell you how he treated Karan? Did the father tell you that? And tell the father, no, you don't do that. I don't know what the word you done did, but Charles, no. Like I said, when Karan was alive, you didn't take care of Karan. You did nothing for Karan. You threw Karan and his mother out on the streets. Did you tell him not? For the neighborhood pipehead. Did you tell him not? So when you go get representations for Karan and didn't speak with the mother and trying to impress whoever, Charles, no. Like I said, it's true. It needs to be investigated, but not by you. And I'm done. No. And I told you that already. No.
Could you secure that door, please?
You're not representing the family. I'm sorry. You're not representing the family. You're representing the deadbeat dad. No.
Excuse me.
That's why I asked if it was live. Thank you.
All right, well, that caught me off guard, but anyway, I'm right back to my business here. It happens all the time when you're dealing with deaths and victims and families that haven't been together for a while, and it happens all the time. It just shouldn't be happening in here, but anyway, back to what I'm saying. I'm right back to what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that, again, the policies of the District of Columbia in terms of the pursuits is not being followed. They are pursuing in high-speed chases, such in this case as Kyron Hilton, and they weren't supposed to be pursuing him, and that's why he's dead today. The District of Columbia does not enforce his policies. That's why he's dead today. The district has a duplicitous message and is not truly supporting the police reforms as they claim. Okay, and so with that being stated, I'm going to let his dad speak, and there are other activists that I want to recognize that are out here in the streets, and they're working on behalf of this cause, and that's the National Black United Front. That is, I'm the New Black Panther Party here. One of the leaders of the New Black Panther Party here is out in the district organizing on this case, and brother Mr. Talib, he's with the Fred Hampton Gun Club, and he supports this case strongly as well, and he's one of the reasons why we're here. Okay, and so with that being stated, you go right ahead, Dad. Speak on behalf of your son.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Brown. I am the father of Karan Kenyatta Hilton Brown, and I too believe that his death was negligence on the police behalf, simply because of the no chase policy. I also feel as though Officer Terrence Sutton is the main reason my son is where he is right now, because he opted to disobey their own policies. So I'm looking. My message is actually to the police department. I am a taxpaying citizen of Washington, D.C.
Take your mask down. Go ahead. I'll put mine on.
I am a taxpaying citizen of Washington, D.C. So I pay their salary, okay? I pay the police department salary. And I don't pay them to disobey the policies set forth for them to govern our city with. I don't pay them for that. I pay them to protect and serve the criminal and the law-abiding citizen. That's what they're supposed to do. So my message is to that officer that's supposed to be a good officer, knowing that there's an officer like Terrence Sutton in their midst. I feel as though that they should pull him up. They should check him themselves and say, hey, man, you giving us a bad look. Because now, you know, as far as I'm concerned, as far as police, I have no love for them. None. None. Because they're all at fault. Because they allowed him to do that. There were 3 other officers in that car with him. One of them should have said, hey, bro, hey, look, let's stop the chase. But neither one of them did. Neither one of them did. So not only Terrence Sutton, but those other 3 in that car as well. Someone should have said stop. And that's how I feel. That's all
right. We'll take your questions, and then others that are working in the community will have their chance to speak or take any questions that you have at this time.
I have a couple, but first, can we open that door so we can just do a pandemic? Can we get
Go right ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. Well, I do have one. I have several questions, but when is the last time that you all have heard from NPD, if at all?
Tuesday night when we were outside.
The Wednesday.
Wednesday night when we were outside.
Yeah, when we got the actual police
yeah.
report, and we saw that was the last. I don't know what the date that date was, but that was the last time.
Yeah.
And then have they given you any information since that press release that they had on the 29th? Or that news conference that they had on the 29th?
No.
No updated information on the case?
Hey, Mr. Shabazz, if I could, you said you were going to launch an investigation, but no litigation, so there's no lawsuit being filed at
Not
this time?
today. I do not come to announce a lawsuit today. I come to say that the investigation is being pursued at this time. And I can't say that litigation would not be far off, but not at this time. You know, what we really want to try to do here is really test how serious the city is about bringing about a resolution to these kind of situations and cases. That's what we want to do here. Really, it's time for Mayor Bowser and the chief to try to re-examine the whole way that they're dealing with the police community interaction, so you don't have the near riots that were breaking out last week and are probably likely to break out in the future. If you notice that any time now that anyone is in the District of Columbia is injured or harmed by the police, the community response is getting more and more militant. It's getting more and more radical. I just drove down Georgia Avenue the other day. The whole Walmart was boarded up because of Kyron Hilton Brown. And an attack was launched on the police station, or all the windows were broken out. We've never seen that in the District of Columbia for years, because people are getting fed up. And that's on this kind of case, which is what the police want to try to call a traffic case. So if hypothetically next week or an outright police shooting would occur, you can imagine the kind of escalation that's going to be taking place in the district because of these unresolved issues. So we're investigating, talk to the city, talk to the mayor to see how serious really are they about bringing some changes to the way policing is done in the District of Columbia.
If I could, a question for Mr. Brown. What would have to happen? What could the police do to regain your trust and to satisfy you in the case of the loss of your son?
One, I would like to see, especially Officer Sutton. I don't know the other three officers, but especially Officer Sutton. He does not need to be a police officer anywhere in this country. Anywhere in this country. Anywhere in this country. He needs to be gone, period. The other police officers, I hold them accountable. I hold them accountable because they didn't police him. They didn't make him stop. So I hold them accountable. And not only...
Is Sutton being supervised? That's the question. Is he being supervised? I've been out last week on the street where the incident happened. He has a terrible reputation in that area. The residents say that he violates constitutional rights of the people on that street all the time, that he uses any pretense to try to stop and frisk or racially profile the people that he's dealing with on Kennedy Street, that he is acting as if he's above the law. And the question would be, well, is he being supervised, and what's really going on here?
I believe that, Sutton has also...
Well, you take your mask off.
Karan has an older brother, and Sutton has hit him several times in chases, unlawful chases. So it's something that he does where he attacks the young men in the community for whatever reasons. If you watch the video footage as edited as it is, you see the cops pat his pockets. That's something that they do on a regular basis when they're either trying to take money from them or whatever it is that they're doing from them. So this is something that Sutton continues to do. He has harassed my personal brothers and then now my sister's children. It's not just Karan. He, of course, the life of my nephew is gone now, but he has attacked his older brother. He hit him with a police cruiser off of a bike and broke his leg in 3 places. So this is not the first time. This is where it needs to stop, though. The parents are upset. They want justice for their child, of course. They want to see the police officers held accountable, and they want to see we want to see them reprimanded. And I want to see the mayor say my nephew's name. And I want her to acknowledge the parents and the community, That's what I want to see happen. I don't want a blanket statement. I want you to acknowledge my nephew and say his name.
Mm.
In the history, in what appears to be a history of run-ins with this officer, has anyone ever filed a formal complaint?
Several.
Okay.
Several. It's like the police department, they know what they do. They're all brothers, and they cover for each other. So when his mom they know his mom as well. Sutton has had interference with his mother before, has chastised Karan's mother before. So you have my brothers, two of my brothers. You've had Sutton chastise my sister. You've had Sutton hit and harm my older nephew. And now you have Sutton in this case, or in this incident, now is the fault of the death of my nephew. And several other, if you literally go down there on 7th and Kennedy and ask anyone about those names, they know those cops by name. And even in the video, he admitted my nephew into the hospital as John Doe, but in the video, he said, Karan, he's yelling him by first name. So that lets you know that there's a familiarity there.
Mm.
It has to stop.
That's right.
And again, I'm sorry, just so I can be clear, the members who've had these things happen to them by this officer, have they filed formal complaints?
Yes, yes.
Do you know whether they were
pursued or have taken action? No. They were probably swept under the rug. They were probably shredded when they left the police department. When you call, they hang up. When you go back up there, they laugh about it, or they're like, oh, whoever is here that's handling this case is not here. It's swept under the rug. But you see with this and everything, like Mr. Shabazz has said, people are becoming angry and they're more radical now. And they're upset. No, people are no longer being chastised by police and just sweeping it under the rug. You're going to be boarding up the whole entire country if something does not happen. Right. Justice needs to be served.
That's right. And picking up on that, that's excellent. Excellent. Picking up on that, our first priority in our investigation is going to be through the Freedom of Information Act, and that all of his personnel and records, and records of complaints and records of internal affairs and disciplinary acts, or at least attempted disciplinary acts. His whole record is we're going to be pursuing to get that right away. We're going to have answers to what has happened to the complaints and what this officer's status has been over the course of his career. We're going to find that out, and we're going to make it available to the public right away. I mean, this is part of what I do in general. When anybody is killed in the District of Columbia as a result of an interaction with the police, this is part of the investigation procedure. And so we're going to make that available as soon as possible. We've heard a lot of bad things about this officer, and we want to get to the bottom of it and see what the facts and the details are.
We obviously have 2 holidays coming up, right? We've got Thanksgiving around the corner, Christmas after that. Obviously, this is a tough time for families with the pandemic dealing with that, but also for you, there's extra things that you're going to be thinking about this holiday season. Have you thought about what that looks like without your son?
Yes, I have. Again, we're trying to push legislation. Me and the family and some friends came up with some ideas, and we're the holidays mean absolutely nothing to me, honestly. So what I want to do is continue to work on legislation to try to get policing much better in this country, like we're all trying to say. And I mean, that's just all I can say. I'm tired, and I'm running out of patience. Seriously, I'm running out of patience. So,
yes.
As we are preparing for the holidays, that is a time when our family comes together. So here we are gathering before the holidays to plan a funeral. So of course this has emotional impact on us as well as the parents. They're without a child, so there is no Christmas preparation for that child. There is no Thanksgiving for that child. He just had a daughter. His daughter's 3 months old. This would be her first Christmas. So all of those things are, of course, being taken away from us as his family and as his support system. But the parents don't have a child to talk to anymore. So beyond the holidays, they don't have a child. That's the point here.
And that's a big point, a huge point. Okay, I have some mothers here that are you all gonna? I would like to give them at least the community activists who are working the streets, and they can tell you about the temperature on the streets, the vibe on what has happened, and so forth. And they're part of this process these days, the lawyers and the street organizers. So, Mr. Atunde, do you have anything to say?
I first heard about this through a friend. It was on a Sunday night, and I got a call, and I heard about what was going on. And I talked to a few people from the neighborhood, Karan's best friend and everything like that, and he was talking to me, letting me know what was going on. And I immediately started calling around to the New Black Panther Party and a few other organizations that I'm connected with, and went up there, talked to the family, met the father, met the mother, and I stayed up there the entire time at the hospital. They had their son on life support, and they wanted to, I tried to help them also call Malik so that we can try to at least get him one more day where they can at least see if his vitals return to normal, at least some type of something that's going to show that he has a fighting chance to continue to live. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and I stayed with the father. They wouldn't even let the father and the mother into the room as their son passed away. So unfortunately, the hospital allowed their son to be alone when he passed away instead of letting the father and the mother be in the room. I think that was a disgrace to the family on behalf of the hospital. The DC as a whole has been representing the family very terribly in this situation, from the hospital to the mayor to the police department. All three have shown blatant disrespect to the mother, the father, and the family of Karan Hilton. Immediately, I began to get on social media, gathering as many alliances and people to hit the streets to try to come out there and combat the tyranny of the police in the community. I go to different places. It doesn't matter what city it's in, Kentucky, North Carolina, Louisiana. I'm there on the ground whenever I hear something happening in the community. I also believe that that is important for us as a people to be there, because no matter what city it's in, who it is, any injustice to one person is an injustice to all of us. So I may not have known Karan Hilton personally for myself, but as a father, and I'm a single parent father of a little girl, that struck home for me because I couldn't imagine being without my child. So he didn't even get a future to be with his daughter and see her grow up to be someone great, because we know that's exactly what she's going to become. So it's very horrific. I'm going to make sure that I stay with the father. I'm going to help him push the legislation on behalf of his son. I believe the legislation is the Karan Hilton law that he's trying to develop and get put together. I'm going to help him try to raise some type of foundation. If the family needs anything, I'm going to be there. I plan on helping the community put up a plaque in the community for all the people in that neighborhood and around DC to represent all of the fallen brothers and sisters at the hand of the police. So I want to make sure I stay involved no matter what. Unfortunately, I would want this to be the last time that you see us in a room or another family like this, but unfortunately, this is what America is. And unfortunately, if they don't get it together, it's going to continue. And like you said, we're going to have to start boarding things up, and you're going to continue to see black men and women like me carrying more firearms. I shouldn't have to wear a bulletproof vest when I walk out the house, but I'm a black man in America, and that's what I have to do every time I step out my door, because I don't feel safe. Not for my own people or regular people, but because I'm scared of the police in the country. So they don't get it together, you're going to start seeing more brothers and sisters arming themselves, patrolling the community to protect each other, and it's going to be civil unrest until they get it together.
Sir, I'm sorry, can I get your first and last name and the organization you represent?
Talib Atunde is Talib Atunde, and it's the Fred Hampton Gun Club.
Okay. Jade. This is Jade.
Yes, I'm Jade Harrell Arundel. JadeHarrellArrindell. I've been outside organizing, really doing independent Black media on social media, talking to community members, talking to some of Karan's friends, covering the protests involved with this incident. And I'm really concerned about the racial implications of what's clear to me that Karan Hilton was targeted by white police officers from the 4th District within the DC Metropolitan Police Department. I've spoken to other young Black men who have known Karan, who are familiar with this notorious officer, Terrence Sutton. He was so notorious that the community nicknamed him Tattoo, based off of the number of tattoos that he had. And folks have spoken, Black men and Black women in the community on Kennedy Street have spoken about being targeted, harassed, and profiled by this particular officer. So when these sorts of things happen, I'm definitely really concerned, and it's important that we conduct our own investigations and media, independent Black media, to really get those narratives that the mainstream does not carry on the mainstream airwaves. But above all things, I'm a friend to this family. I remember Karan when he was a baby. His aunt, Tamika, is a dear friend of mine. We've grown up since middle school, and I think I even remember when Karen was pregnant with Karan, right? And so this hits particularly closer to home. Yes, I am a member and a national officer, National Vice Chair of Administration for the National Black United Front. We are a historic Black liberation organization that's been around for over 41 years. And when these sorts of officer-involved incidents and tyranny, genocide against Black people take place around our country, we definitely do organize and look at the long-term policy implications of said incidents. And so I am committed to work closely with the family of Karan Hilton Brown to make sure that we get justice for this family and for all families that are targeted by police tyranny and genocide. Unfortunately, yes, Mayor Muriel Bowser has had a terrible track record with responding to officer-involved incidents within the District of Columbia. Not long ago, in September, Dion K. was killed by a DC police officer. I think he was a white Latino police officer, last name Alvarez. The body cam footage was released. During that ordeal, community members gathered, we did community cleanups, there was a vigil that took place, and we also offered a lot of support to the family. And there was silence coming from the mayor's office. And so while we have a Black female mayor that's being held for, or is seen in high regard for being a Black woman in a position of power, who painted Black Lives Matter as a mural on the ground, it actually doesn't translate to anything if there aren't any policies or systems of accountability put in place to bring justice to the families like Karan Hilton Brown, as well as Dion K. and countless others who have been killed by what I think are suspected white supremacists within the DC Metropolitan Police Department. And we will launch our own investigation. We will get to the bottom of this, and we're going to do this for people across the country.
All right. These are very good statements being made. Okay, and lastly, and then we'll close. Again, my website here is blackrightsmatter.org. Website of Black Lawyers for Justice is blackrightsmatter.org, and that's where we're going to begin updating on this case at blackrightsmatter.org. To speak to you lastly will be Imam Akbar, IMAMAKBAR, and he will make a statement on behalf of the new Black Panther Party.
Good afternoon. I am Sheikh Imam Akbar. I am the national spokesman for the new Black Panther Self-Defense, and we got the information from the Fred Hampton Gun Club, and Brother Taliban Tundi contacted me as well that I contacted Black Lawyers for Justice. I am a national investigator for some of the cases for the Black Lawyers for Justice, and we began looking at a vehicular homicide that has been orchestrated by an officer, by an MPD officer here in the District of Columbia, a form of isolated, systemic type of isolation and racism in the streets of the district. Frequently, I find cases from 7D, 4D, from 5D, that 3 or 4 white men pursuing one young black man, and we find that this to be highly inordinate. It's not an ordinary set of circumstances. It's a highly exaggerated set of circumstances to just a young guy maybe just riding his moped, or a group of young men on mopeds, legislation about buying gas for young men in the moped. And then we stretch back to the case of Shakisha Johnson on Green Street and the fire. Many of you news reporters know about the firecracker incident when Chief Ramsey, and from Ramsey to Lanier, and now Newsom is here, and Muriel Browser is here, but they're showing very low sensitivity for actually getting into the offices and looking at what is actually taking place on the street. In the Alliance of Concerned Men, I cross-cultural chain. We're trained from some of the youth divisions here in the district. But Randy absconded unit here in the district for 7 years, the return of runaway young men and women, 12 to 21. So my experience is extensive. It's 50 years as a chaplain in this city, and seen all type. My barber's father was executed on West Virginia Avenue. Same system. Mr. Brown was executed over some tools. Officer shot him down. And as you know, there are far too many cases and less of the concern from the administrators, the people who have ability to make the change at the city council level, at even the ANC level, can influence and change the government, change the legislation, whether it's judicial or legislative. You have to bring full impact of influence to stop the police brutality here in the District of Columbia. And we are well organized against this, and you'll see us in the future doing more to bring an end to police brutality. And it's a subtle form of white nationalism, and it could go all the way as high as Donald Trump being really like a grand wizard influencing many cities, all of the cities, especially Washington, D.C., of all of this white nationalism and the police brutality systemically and systematically directed at the black youth, the black man, the black woman. First time in history, the parents have been beaten, pepper sprayed, and maced. The mother pepper sprayed and maced and beaten. Father arrested. This is historical, especially here in the District of Columbia, as the Attorney Shabazz alluded to earlier, the attacking of the station and all of that. You saw them level a station over in Minneapolis, and then the world cried for justice. Well, right now we are taking justice, and we're using justice to what? Be in the form of something to aid and assist the ordinary person here in the District of Columbia. So we hope that you will support our efforts, and we send sympathy to the father and to the mother for the loss of his son, Karan Kenyatta Hilton. Did not deserve that. It's a vehicular homicide, and he's forced into the traffic and into an execution.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service, and I'm thankful for this news conference. I would say, so that's it for now, but we'll keep you updated, and the struggle continues, and the struggle has to intensify. And so you'll be hearing much more from this family, and you're going to hear much more from Black Lawyers for Justice in general. You're going to hear much more from me in this fight, because all of the community is crying out, and you're going to hear, obviously, much more from these very well-spoken and dedicated activists. We're not begging for change. We're going to force some changes.
Very lastly, this Terrence Tattoo Sutton is almost like an organized gang. There's a network of this across the city. So we want you to know we've investigated to see that there is a pattern in the city, and especially in 70 in Southeast called Ward 8. We see it more visible in Northeast and Southeast. But there are patterns of this white officers from Kansas, New Hampshire, from wherever he's from. But he's never been trained or culturally trained to work. He's unfit to serve as an officer in the black community. Sometimes with 1, 2, 3, or 4 guns on one officer.
That's an important point.
So we want you to, they're like they're going to Desert Storm or somewhere, and they're going on the street to manage our black youth. So we're
important
going to
point.
bring an end to that.
That's an important point. Any further questions? All right. Thank you all for taking your time to come out. Again, you have my number here. It's blackrightsmatter.org is this website. I thank everybody else that's fighting this case, and you'll hear more from them, and you'll hear more from us, and bless the memory of Brother Kyron Kenyatta Hilton Brown. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ra. Amen. Ra.
All right.
I don't wish to disclose my first or last name, if you don't mind.
You're watching News Now from Fox. I'm Daytona Everett. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday night. It is about 8 o'clock out here in Phoenix, Arizona, but we got a lot of stuff to still take you to. But first, we're going to take some of you to a 2-minute break. We'll see you guys in a second. For those of you who are sticking around with us, we're going to stay on the COVID-19 beat. I'm sorry, we're going to switch it up and move over into the COVID-19 beat and take you out to West Virginia, where they are seeing the highest number of new daily cases today. They were setting a record for that. Hospitalizations have slightly dipped, but deaths are up as well. And so people are looking for answers out there in West Virginia of what the state is going to be moving into. So let's listen into that. Again, you're watching News Now from Fox.
Veterans Day, a day that is close to all of our hearts, and I'll get to that in just a few moments. Since Monday, we've lost another 23 West Virginians. You can see on the television all across our nation, this thing is amped up, and it keeps getting worse and worse. We're all very, very hopeful that it will, as it's done in the past, it will peak, and then it'll go the other way. But right now, we're still going up. We've now lost 553 West Virginians. Our 531st death is a 96-year-old female from Boone County. Our 532nd death, a 75-year-old female from Boone County. Our 533rd death, a 92-year-old male from Wetzel County. Our 534th death, and listen to this, a 47-year-old male from Wetzel County. Our 535th death, a 79-year-old female from Boone County. Our 536th death, a 65-year-old male from Preston County. Our 537th death, a 65-year-old male from Marshall County. Our 538th death is an 85-year-old male from Wetzel County. Our 539th death, a 79-year-old female from Fayette County. Our 540th death, an 85-year-old female from Putnam County. Our 541st death, an 81-year-old female from Ohio County. Our 542nd death, a 78-year-old male from Hancock County. Our 543rd death, a 72-year-old female from Raleigh County. Our 544th death, a 76-year-old male from Kanawha County. Our 545th death, an 80-year-old female from Kanawha County. Our 546th death, an 88-year-old female from Summers County. Our 547th death, a 71-year-old male from Cabell County. Our 548th death, a 67-year-old female from Mingo County. Our 549th death, a 70-year-old female from Cabell County. Our 550th death, an 84-year-old female from Cabell County. Our 551st death, a 41-year-old male from Raleigh County. Our 552nd death, an 80-year-old male from Wyoming County. And our 553rd death, a 71-year-old female from Kanawha County. All these people range in age. We have absolutely dialed in, no question, that our elderly are the most attacked by this killer. We have a 96-year-old and many, many, and 92, many in the 80s and 70s, but just look. We have a 41-year-old male and a 47-year-old male that we've lost as well. So this killer is with us. We got to continue to try to do everything we possibly can that we have up on our guidelines, and we have got to do everything we possibly can to be tested so that we can absolutely isolate people that have this disease that don't know it, that are continuing to spread it. But today, just like many days, and the last little bit especially, have been really tough ones. So please keep all these people in your thoughts and prayers. Please, please do. We have had 885 new positive cases in the last 24 hours. This is a record beyond belief. Our daily positivity rate is almost 6%. Is it at 5.90%? Our cumulative positive continues to rise and is at 3.11. We have active cases now of 7,771 cases in West Virginia. We have hospitalized patients of 277. And yesterday we did test in excess of 11,000 people. That's why we're finding all of these additional positives. It will pay big dividends for us if we will just continue to test. Now, our RT number or our reproduction number is at 1.08. That's better. It's the 13th best in the country. Now we only have one county in the red, is Mingo. We have 9 in the orange. That's Ohio, Mineral, Tyler, Wood, Jackson, Nicholas, Fayette, Lincoln, and Wyoming counties. On Tuesday, the number of people with COVID at U.S. hospitals topped 60,000 in the country. That's 2,000 more than were hospitalized on April 15th when this thing was running like crazy and you were watching New York and people dying all over the place. Texas has become the first state in the United States to record 1 million COVID cases, according to Johns Hopkins. We got a real problem, a real problem. And I know there's experts all over the place. I've got a couple of them with me today, but there's experts all over the place that are trying to do any and everything we possibly can to stop this. Again, encourage all West Virginians, especially before this holiday period, to take us up on this free testing and get tested. You'll see on our website, when and where we're going to be. The drive-through pharmacy testing is also available to you. We have 18 outbreaks in our schools. We have now jumped up to 118 confirmed cases. They're all up on our website as well. We have 72 long-term care facility outbreaks. We have 19 outbreaks now in 13 counties in our churches. Those are Cabell, Fayette, Hardy, Jefferson, Kanawha, Lewis, Mingo, Monroe, Raleigh, Ritchie, Tyler, and Wood and Wyoming counties. And again, I encourage everything I've said over and over. There's no point in continuing to repeat it. You've heard me 1,000 times about the pews and the mask, and please do that if you're going to go to church. You know, the Stevens Correctional Center, which is operated in McDowell County, has reported an outbreak among both inmates and staff. Stevens has 38 inmates and 11 staffs, that are positive. I got a call from Cecil Patterson. Cecil's with the county commission and does a marvelous job. He's a good friend, and The second that I got a call, you know, we ran to the fire, and that's what we'll do and do always and everything. You know, outside of this outbreak, we only have 6 other inmates and 34 other staff cases all across our state. Like I said, at Stevens, right there in McDowell County, we have 38 active inmate cases and 11 staff, and the odds are, the way this normally works, it's probably going to get a little worse before it gets better. But nevertheless, I appreciate Cecil and notifying me, and we were able to jump on this. I'm sure they notified all the health officials as well, but we were able to jump on it, and you know, the National Guard is standing by to sanitize once the outbreak has been isolated and the scope of the infection is known. So, you know, the National Guard will do great work there as well. We are now at 175,698,000 plus as far as it's been awarded to our cities and counties. We need them to continue to do what they're doing and apply and everything. I got to say this, you know, right outside today, we've got a bunch of wonderful kids, wonderful kids that have been dealt a tough hand. You know, they're athletes that participate in athletics, and I know how hard they work because I coach all the time. You know, this just happens to be a bunch of young girls. I coach a girls team. I absolutely understand how hard that our girls work, absolutely just as hard as the guys, because I've coached the guys as well. Now, I can tell you just this, that, you know, all of us want them to be able to play. But at the same time, we're trying with all in us to keep some level of protocol that we have put in place to be able to ensure the safety of all of us. You know, these counties, you know, they had testing options to where they could have flooded the place with tests. We would have found more people. We would have been able to help those people. The number of tests would have surely impacted and helped them from their color coding and all that kind of stuff. So there are many different avenues that we could have gone here. But the bottom line to the whole thing that we cannot lose focus with is I just read another 23. You know, on Monday on Monday I read some cases that we had backlogged or missed or whatever, or maybe the reason had just gotten determined, or the local health people or the hospitals rather didn't fill out the death report and everything, and it just got to us and everything, and we kind of, ferreted it all out and everything and figured it out. But in that, I read off 44 people that we've lost. Today, another 23. Our positivity rate cumulative is at 3.11. We have 885, I think is what I said, tested positive in the last 24 hours. Let me tell you, first and foremost, in regard to our kids, we need to try to be in school. And if we can't be in school, the last thing on earth we need to be occupied with is a ball game. Now, I understand with all in me how bad and how tough these kids are hurting, because we had to pull the plug when my team was getting ready to play in the state tournament. And those kids work really hard to get there. I hate it more than you'll ever know for those kids, because they are in many ways innocent bystanders, and really and truly, that's just all there is to it. There's not much that I can do, because we have absolutely vetted this with every possible expert in the world, and the experts' decisions, were to hold tight with right where we're at in an effort to try to do something about this dreaded killer. And it makes no sense to anybody for us to not be in school but yet be out trying to play a ball game. It's tough stuff. Tough stuff. But nevertheless, if I jump over to Veterans Day, you know, and do I want to do that now, Jordan? The Veterans Day? Okay, well, I just, you know, my notes here say, please join me on this Veterans Day in thanking the men and women that have served this country or that have and are serving in our Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, you know, and I guess in our Space Force as well. I mean, you know, and so, but it is a day of thankfulness that every last one of us should absolutely feel to our heart. What these wonderful men and women have given and give and will continue to give us in each and every way is everything we have. Everything. Everything we have. I've said it over and over. We owe everything in this country to these great men and women that have stepped up and served, and many of them have absolutely paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so for their families and everything, let's remember them and remember them in your prayers as well. And again, I can never possibly thank them enough. Today at 1 p.m., we will have a special Veterans Day ceremony. And I encourage all of you to watch on whatever channel you're watching this briefing right now. So at 1 p.m., you can join all of us in a special ceremony and for this absolutely wonderful celebration of a wonderful, wonderful day. So that's all I've got right now. And again, I hate it for those kids and daggone, I hate it for our schools, and we got to some way stop this thing from the standpoint of hating it in every way for all these names of people that we've lost that we're reading. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Governor. Let's now go to Dr. Clay Marsh, our coronavirus czar.
Well, good morning. It's good to be with everybody, and I'd first like to send my appreciation and for our leadership team and university and state for General Hoyer and all the veterans out there on this very special day. It's a sober day, though, and I think that you got that from the governor's tone. When we look around the country, we are seeing more people infected with COVID-19 than we've seen at any other part of this pandemic. Over the last 8 days, we've had over 100,000 people test positive on a daily basis, which is more than any single day before then. We see more people, as the governor said, in hospitals in our country today than we've seen at any other point in the COVID pandemic. And we see it getting worse, not better. As we look in West Virginia, we are seeing an all-time high this past 24 hours in the number of people that have tested COVID positive, and we are at an all-time high weekly average. And it tells us that West Virginia, while people have done well, and we're so proud of our citizens' actions and working together as a community of West Virginians, that we need to step it up. There's really 4 parts to an effective strategy map with COVID-19. The first part is extensive testing, and the governor's gone over that, and we need to continue this so that we can identify people that are super spreaders, the 5 to 10% of people that spread to 80% of others, oftentimes when they are asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. The second area is very effective contact tracing, so we can identify those people and their contacts so that we can remove them from other people that they may infect unintentionally to try to reduce the rate of spread of COVID-19. The third part, which is really important, which is the part that we constantly ask about, but it's important that we continue to encourage each citizen out there, which is mitigation. And mitigation is the wearing of masks and staying physically distanced and avoiding the 3 C's, the crowds, closed indoor spaces, and close contacts of others. We know that today Many of our deaths are happening in nursing homes. When we look at all of our outbreaks, over 80% of the people dying are from nursing homes. And the majority of people that are bringing the virus into nursing homes is happening from the community, happening from community get-togethers of friends and family members where people are not being as cognizant of wearing masks, from indoor environments where people are taking their masks off. And we know nationally that includes restaurants and bars and coffee shops and gyms. And this is really a time that we have to be even more committed to controlling that spread. The governor talked last press briefing about the exciting new understanding and observations from the vaccine trial, particularly from the Pfizer vaccine, but just recognize that even though that is a very encouraging trial, not all Americans will be able to get immunized right away, and it will take a while for the 2 immunizations to get done. And therefore, in the meantime, as we very much await that very important part of our mitigation strategy, which should help reduce the infection in the country, that we need to serve that span, that gap between the time that we get everybody immunized and today by wearing masks and staying physically distanced. And the last part of an effective strategy is to pay close attention to hospital capacity issues. We know in countries and in states where we see surge happen and when we see hospital capacity start to be constrained, not only on the number of beds available for critically ill people that need the most complex and best care that we can give, but also on the staff, because people from the hospital also get infected, oftentimes from the community. So protecting our vital workers, whether it's hospital workers or first responders or other health workers in nursing homes, assisted care facilities, or in schools or other important parts of our ecosystem in the state of West Virginia. So as we look at hospital capacity, we see that there's more people with COVID, confirmed COVID, and with probable COVID than we've seen in the past several months. And so we are very closely watching that because it's about a 2 to 4 week period between the time that you see a lot of new positive people and you start to see a bit of a surge at the hospital level. So all in all, West Virginia, you're doing well, but we're starting to see that the deaths are rising. Our hospital numbers are starting to rise, and we see spread that is very much throughout West Virginia and throughout our country. So it is really time for us to rally together and answer this call to service on this very special Veterans Day. And as you have served before, our country and our world and our state, please serve again. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Marsh. Next to Major General Hoyer with the West Virginia National Guard.
Good morning. This morning I'd like to just focus a little bit on the significance of Veterans Day to us as veterans as it relates to context of this pandemic. For most all veterans, Veterans Day is not about the parades, the days off, or people even saying thanks. It's about recognizing that ordinary people stepped up and made extraordinary sacrifices. They took on additional extraordinary service, and they took on the responsibility for others so that we could all have freedoms and rights that the governor mentioned earlier in the comments. So for us today, I would hope that we take 2 things. One is the pain that if you watch closely, you see in the governor's face with each name or each individual that he reads on each of these events, and that extraordinary sacrifice of ordinary people, our veterans, and put those things together as a motivator for us all individually to take on the responsibility of doing the things that the governor's asking us to do that we know help us mitigate the spread of this virus, and to reduce, to eliminate the fact that our governor has to get on every day and read individuals who we've lost during this pandemic. I thank you on behalf of all veterans for the things that people recognize, but I ask us on behalf of all veterans to take on that responsibility, do the things we need to do to address that threat. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Next to Dr. Ayn Amjad, our State Health Officer.
Good afternoon. I do want to thank General Hoyer and all the veterans who are listening, and thank everyone for the service and the sacrifice for our country. And they are the example that we do need to follow for the services that they have provided, and that we do need to follow their example to continue to fight during this pandemic, because as General Hoyer did mention, this is a time that we need to continue to fight and move forward in order to get through these next few months during this COVID-19 pandemic. I do also want to mention we did put up on our DHHR website a holiday guidance document for people who were asking to have some recommendations for Thanksgiving and the upcoming holidays. You can find that on our website under information and public guidance documents. If you are going to see your families, then we do recommend a few things, such as only to stick around immediate family members. A few other things to mention are if you had COVID-19, especially within that diagnosis frame, to obviously not go around any family members. If you think you've been around anyone with COVID-19, to not go around any crowded members. Also, if you've had a test recently and been symptomatic, to not go around any family members. Also, if you've been planning on going to see anyone, we do recommend going to get tested, and also maybe going within 5 days, because we don't know the time lag between getting test results right now. We have been seeing a shortened time, maybe 2 to 3 days, but we don't know if it's going to take longer. So those are a few things that we recommended, but we do have our holiday guidance up on our DHHR website right now for anyone to view that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Amjad. Secretary Bill Crouch with the West Virginia DHHR is also joining us today and is available for questions. We'll now go to questions from members of the media. The first today from Charles Young with WV News.
Hi, this is Charles Young with WV News. I wanted to ask about the testing capacity at our pharmacies. I know when we talked about it, I think it was a week ago, we said there were some locations that had the ability to do less than 40 tests a day. Where does that stand now? Thank you.
Maybe, yeah.
So, Charles, we continue to increase the number of pharmacies that are participating. We are currently, DHHR, and I'm assisting them, are putting together an initiative with an additional pharmacy chain. We're looking for pharmacies that can increase that capacity. In addition to that, we have additional clinics and federally funded healthcare facilities coming online, and we are working on an interactive map that will be available that you can look at each county and you can see where you can go to be tested. So those pharmacies that can increase capacity, we will continue to work with to grow them as we go forward.
All right, thank you, Charles. Next to Kenny Bass with WCHS and Fox 11.
Hi, this is Kenny Bass with Channel 8 and Fox 11. I very quickly want to say thank you to Major Hoyer and the West Virginia National Guard, the veterans, for their service. I was honored to travel with them to Afghanistan and Kuwait, all around the world, and there's not a better group of people, so thank you very much for your service. I have a question for Dr. Marsh or Dr. Amjad. Obviously, Dr. Marsh, you painted the picture of what you've seen. Can you dig a little more deeply into the trend that the state is facing? Obviously, you've said many times that when you have more testing, you get more positives, but we're also hearing of community spread, small gatherings of family and friends, which Dr. Amjad just referenced, talking about Thanksgiving. So how can we tell what more positives are coming from increased testing and what positives are coming from that community spread? And what are the trends showing you as far as number of cases, positives, and deaths that if things don't change, West Virginia is facing, say, over the next month or so between now and Christmas or the new year? Thank you.
No, go.
Okay. So thank you, Kenny, and I'll start, then please add in. So as you have very nicely asked, Kenny, that we understand that while increased testing does identify new cases, that those new cases are real activity in the state of West Virginia. We have seen, as we've said, the highest single week total that we have seen in the entirety of the COVID pandemic over the last week, and today, over the last 24 hours, is the highest single day total. We have seen our cumulative percent positive rise from well under 3 to now over 3, and that's been kind of an inexorable climb, which demonstrates that at a percent of all the tests we're doing, we're seeing more positives, which implies that it's not just a proportional more tests, more positive cases, that there's actually more disease in the state of West Virginia. Now, identifying those new people is spectacularly important because, as we've talked about many times, 50 to 75% of the spread of COVID-19 in any community is mediated by people who don't know they have the disease and are a real small percent of the entire population of people who may be infected, these people called super spreaders. And so it's really important that we test broadly to identify this subset, which can really start to get a better handle and reduce the spread of COVID-19 in West Virginia. We know from national data and from our own epidemiology data that outbreaks are generally started in community settings. In community settings, as we've talked about, like family or extended friend gatherings, Halloween parties, in bars, in restaurants, in gyms, in coffee shops, and we know that this is getting more widespread. And we believe that, although I know that many people are working very, very diligently to maintain and to follow all of the things that we've asked, that people get tired and get tired of wearing masks and get tired of physical distancing. And those are the things that start to drive that spread too, because remember, that spreads through droplets. And there's a new CDC study that says that masks not only keep you from generating more droplets, which protects other people from you, but also blocks droplets coming into you, so protects you from other people. So it is getting more clear that wearing masks is not just a source of altruism to care for others, but is also a way to protect yourself. So I think that this, even though we have tested more, which is super important, we are seeing more spread in communities, and we believe the modus of community spread is really being generated by gatherings of people who are getting close to one another and not wearing masks as we have asked them to do. Hein?
The only thing I would add to that, Kenny, is that we've asked people in communities to not gather in large groups and just stick to their immediate cohorts or family members, to try to avoid any large gatherings, to wear their masks and to really social distance. A lot of people travel even in cars to work together, that if that's the case, to wear your mask in your car. It is uncomfortable at times, but to just avoid any large gatherings. It is spreading throughout those modes as well. People do want to have some type of parties. We understand those reasonings, but those are the spreads that we are seeing in communities. But you have to wear a mask and social distance if you're going to be gathering in those ways. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kenny. Next to Brad McElhenney with West Virginia Metro News.
Hello, Governor. Hello, everyone. Just wanted to wish everyone well on Veterans Day, particularly General Hoyer and the National Guard in West Virginia, which have been working so hard the last few months. On to my question. A couple of days ago, Governor, you revealed that 27 COVID-related deaths that had occurred over prior weeks and months were being added to the state's total for the first time because they had not been reported up from the local level until now. Over the summer, a similar situation arose with the inaccuracy of coronavirus figures that was overstating some active cases in a particular county. At that point, you said you lost confidence in the state health officer, prompting her dismissal. I want to make clear I am not advocating for the dismissal of the current public health officer, but I would like to hear an explanation of the consistency. If there's a data discrepancy, what's the difference? Thank you.
Well, Brad, you know, I'm surely not going to get into all the particulars, but you've got to just entrust in me that there was many additional reasons. You know, this was not like all of a sudden we just ended up with an inaccuracy, you know, and therefore we decided to go another way. You know, Dr. Schlemp is a good person, and we appreciate her service in many ways, but trust me, you know, there was a lot of consultation with all the people that were on board, from, you know, Dr. Marsh to Secretary Crouch to on and on and on, you know, to the people within DHHR, and there was other issues, and the accumulation of all of it led to the dismissal. So I am very, very confident in Dr. Amjad and the great job she's been doing, and really and truly, I think what we have discovered here, and we brought it to you, is the fact that that agencies, you know, down on the county level, you know, or hospitals had not properly sent in the documentation, and considering, you know, that's a very valid explanation, and when those things happen, we want to be completely transparent, and so that we have you know, scrubbed the system to look even harder and everything, and when we find something, we're going to tell you.
All right, thank you, Brad. Next to Mark Curtis with Nexstar Media.
Good morning, Governor. Good morning, Cabinet members. I'm sorry I missed most of the briefing, and I apologize if I asked something that's already been addressed or asked. But given the big spike in numbers, and obviously this 850 plus number from today is a new record for the state by 200 some people, are you giving any more shot? I know I've asked this question before, but things keep changing. Are you giving any more thoughts to shutting anything down in the state, restricting travel, bars and restaurants? I mean, what's on the table?
Well, you know, Mark, I'd tell you that everything's on the table. It's always everything's on the table, and I don't mean to give you the same kind of pat answer all the time. You know, you've got to understand the big spike in numbers is driven by the fact that we tested 11,000 people. You know, we're not testing, you know, 3,000 like we were. We're testing 10,000, and when we're testing 10,000, we're going to find people that have this dreaded disease. And so with all that, you know, we're continuing in every way to look at each and everything, you know, as far as the possibility of you know, shutting something down or whatever it may be. You know, I just go back to just simply just this. And like I said, I think these kids are innocent, you know, bystanders. But at the same time, you've got a situation right now where you've got a state volleyball tournament that's going on, or going to be going on. You know, from the standpoint, you've got kids that aren't in schools in these counties. You know, so if you opt out to play sports and not go to schools, that doesn't make any sense. But what doesn't make any sense even more than that is we could go test all these kids, which I would, you know, be all for. You know, and then we could say the kids are good to go. But right behind that, then there's another element, you know, and that is what if we show up at the games and somebody from the county that's completely asymptomatic, you know, they come in and then they infect more people. There's so many ramifications, but Mark, we're watching everything. You know, Dr. Hoyer, General Hoyer and Dr. Marsh can weigh in as well on some stuff here, and I want them to do that. But we are watching everything, and absolutely, I want you to know that everything's got to be on the table. Everything's got to be on the table. You know, so, I mean, if we continue to rise the way we're going and everything, you know, it ultimately will come to at some point in time that we'll have to look awfully hard at shutting things down. But right now, you know, we sure don't want to go that way if we can possibly avoid it. But General Hoyer, if you'd like to add anything, or
Mark, just reinforce what the governor just discussed, we're looking at, as we talked about from the previous question, we continue daily to add pharmacies, test sites, places to get more testing done. We continue daily to work with nursing homes and hospitals to do different mitigation strategies to reduce spread and God help us reduce the number of deaths that we have. So we continue daily. Part of the reason that Dr. Marsh and I are here today in person is to work specifically on some other issues with the governor related to that, along with Secretary Crouch and Dr. Amjad.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next, we'll go to Stephen Adams.
Dr. Marsh, may want to weigh in on that too.
Thank you, Governor. And the only thing that I wanted to add, and we've said this from the very beginning of this pandemic, that an amazingly important component of whatever we choose to do in the future, and I think the governor has been masterful in his approach here, is it is really, really critical that we keep our state together. If we're basically, he would say, pull the rope in the same direction, there's a lot of pithy metaphors that I could use, but the foundation is everything that we both read and everything that we know says that if we fracture ourselves, if we become a house divided, then we lose our strength. And so as we go forward with the strategies that the governor feels are the right strategies to reduce the spread, person to person, county to county spread of COVID-19 in West Virginia, and save lives and improve the well-being of our population, it is critically important that we do this in a way that helps maintain the community, the togetherness, the strong connections that we have as West Virginians together.
Another thing, one other thing from the standpoint of what, General Hoyer mentioned, but the reason that General Hoyer and Dr. Marsh are here in person today is, we're talking nonstop, and we just meet and talk and try, but we've got a few possible new ideas and things we can discuss and make things just one notch better. So we've got a meeting set up for 3 o'clock today, and we're gonna work on it even more. But we're working. People are working on this round the clock. But thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mark. Now we'll go to Stephen Adams with Ogden Newspapers.
Hello, Stephen Adams with Ogden Newspapers here. I'm hearing from local county health departments, smaller health departments in my readership areas, some concerns about, especially since they are fairly small staff organizations, that they're having a little bit of a hard time in regards to testing events, especially since they say that there is a very short timetable that they have to when they're approved to when they get the word out, which sometimes is 24 hours or less, to let their communities and their areas know that the free testing is available, which is what's causing a lot of the issues with smaller turnout at these testing sites. I think Katie Coyne with the Gazette-Mail has a similar story from some southern West Virginia counties as well. Is there a better process for trying to get these testing sites set up and try to, especially in the smaller counties where the staff is somewhat limited, the ability to get these scheduled and get the word out well before a 24-hour basis of time? Thank you.
Maybe General Hoyer is going to answer this, please.
So, Stephen, I think it goes back to Charles's questions and others, and what we continue to reinforce is the governor's pressed us early on to push assets in surge capacity to get testing moving, and then at the same time look at how we create steady state capability within counties that minimizes the impact on local health department staffs. And that's why you hear me talk about us continuing to try to bring more pharmacies online. DHHR is bringing 4 new pharmacies online today. We're talking with one of the pharmacy chains about bringing as many as 58 stores online across the state. We already have Walgreens and Fruth. We're looking at others We've continued to add local clinics as well as federally funded healthcare clinics, and we've got to get to that steady state embedded within communities to address what you just described, and that's what the governor's been pressing us to do and to press forward with.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Next to Brendan Tierney with WSAZ.
Hello, Brendan Tierney with WSAZ here. My question's for the governor. Governor, you had been greeted at the beginning on your way into the Capitol today by a number of players from different high school volleyball teams in Putnam County talking about their desire to be able to take the court despite their county being not allowed to do that from Saturday's map. On Monday, you said that you would make some changes and look into things, and you told them that you really weren't able to make any progress done. So I was hoping you could give us a little bit more details on what exactly you and your office did between Monday and today, and the reasoning behind football players being allowed to possibly change their color on Saturday to play games on Sunday, and why it's different for girls volleyball here.
Okay, I'll take my best shot, at trying to explain, because I think everyone deserves that explanation as best that I possibly can tell you. First of all, I hate it. I hate it like crazy because I know how much these kids give, and I know how hard they work, and I know that they're student athletes, and I know it firsthand because I'm the coach. I hope to goodness that they'll always trust me from the standpoint of telling the truth as best I can. Now, if I go back to the Saturday map that came out, I was notified, and I get notified, first of all, Thursday night at midnight, we cut it off. And then from that point forward, then DHHR amasses the information. Then it goes to a panel, and they review that information to make sure of its accuracy, or make sure that there's not an exception that where we can move a county into a different color. Now, that expert panel is doing terrific work, and they either get that work on late on Friday and then through Saturday morning up until noon. And at noon, Dr. Marsh calls me and gives me a report of the counties that we have and that are in the red, in the orange, and in the gold. At that point in time, then what I do is I tell Dr. Marsh, I said, wait a minute. This county is so close. This county has tested so much. Is there not any way to go back and look and dig even deeper? And so that's what we did. We went back and we started through the process of digging deeper and deeper and deeper. From the standpoint of Putnam County came back, that we could not get them to a better color from the standpoint of where their numbers were. From the standpoint of Berkeley County, we had a bunch of tests that got hung up, and we were waiting to have those tests confirmed. We were told that those test results were a certain level, but and if we went with that at 5 o'clock on Saturday, we would have said Berkeley County's in the gold. We wanted to make absolutely certain that those tests were right. And so that's why we delayed, and that's why we didn't come out until later on Saturday evening, not because we were wanting to make sure that the test, that we were trying to get more tests in to do something and move Berkeley to a better number or a better color. We were told that the tests were like 800 tests. I can't recall exactly what it was. And that only like 30 of those tests were positive and all the rest were negative. And if we put that in, Berkeley County would have immediately become gold. We wanted to make sure that was right. And so we kept working it, and finally we absolutely were positive that it was right. And so we went at that point in time. Now, from the standpoint of the SSAC, you know, and they have continually made moves where they have moved out the soccer tournament or moved out the volleyball sectional or the volleyball regional and everything, you know, and along the way, they have done that repeatedly. Now, the situation now with football is just this. Football doesn't have a sectional and doesn't have a regional and then has a state tournament. You know, football just all starts their state playoff at one time, all at one time, all their teams. Now, with all that, and this is what I've been told, with all that, what they decided, unbeknownst to me, totally on their own, was to move the thing to a Sunday date. Well, in their defense, on their behalf, is just what I just said. Football doesn't have a sectional, regional, and whatever, and we've already done this for soccer, we've done it for volleyball and sectional, regional, and this basically is their sectional that's coming up. And so therefore, they feel like that was the right thing to do. Now, from the standpoint of the Department of Ed and our medical experts, everybody met and talked and discussed all this and came to me with the recommendation that that is correct and the correct thing to do. From the standpoint of the volleyball situation, if in fact we moved the volleyball situation again, you know, what would happen is just this, and I don't know how you get around this. This is the problem. This is the dilemma, and it is the dilemma that is eating all of us up. And it's just simply just this. Teams that have qualified as of today, teams that are in school as of today, are in our state tournament. Now, what if a team that was orange now, that is ineligible right now, what if that team, if what we did is we tested that team and they were okay to go, or we moved the date, and let's just say we moved the date and another team that was eligible today became orange at that time. What do we do? What do we do? You know, we could go back and we could forfeit both teams. You know, we could forfeit one or the other. But that team, as of right this minute, is eligible to play. You know, it is a dilemma beyond belief. You have the dilemma of we are going to put sports in front of school. Ridiculous. You can't do that. We've got these kids that aren't in school right now. I mean, if they're not in school, how in the world do we make it right for them to be able to play sports? The other flip side of it is just this, is what do we do with the parents and the fans and everybody that wants to come from these counties that are absolutely, we know, are orange or red? What do we do? What do we do with all the teams that we've already, because the map has been worked against them and they've had their teams been nullified already? There's so many aspects of it, but what we did is just this. What we did is we went right back to the well on Saturday over and over and over, went right back to the well over the weekend as well. We have absolutely discussed this. For crying out loud, if anybody in their right mind would think that Jim Justice doesn't want these kids to be able to play, they're crazy. I want it so bad it's unbelievable, because I know how hard they work. But Jim Justice also has to make really tough calls and tough decisions. And really, in this situation, Jim Justice has got to protect us in every way from dying. From dying. I have read name after name after name after name We have had every opportunity in these counties, and I have been out here in front of you over and over and over saying, test, test, test. And in a lot of situations, we didn't do it. And in a lot of situations, I've said, wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask. We didn't do it. Now we've got crunch time and tough decisions to make. But I can assure you without any doubt, our team, these medical experts, the education experts, the SSAC, all of us have worked this every way we know to work it. And unfortunately, this is just the very best that can be done today. But and I think it's Brandon, or and I'm not sure exactly, but I thank you for the questions. I love these kids to death. I hate it, I hate it, and I hate it. But really and truly, first and foremost, I want our kids to be able to go to school. I naturally want them to be able to play ball. I want the deaths to stop. I mean, for crying out loud, I know our sports are really important, but they've got to take a back seat to this situation that we're in. We've got to all realize we are in a pandemic, and it is killing people. It is killing people to the tune. I mentioned the Sago mine. For a lot of you that are out there that remember the Sago situation, we had 12 miners trapped. One of them survived. We thought we found them, and all 12 were alive. Everybody was celebrating. Days went on before we found them. And then everybody was screaming, they're alive, they're alive. And then we found out they weren't. 11 out of 12 of them had passed. And one was alive and then ended up with many, many complications. It dominated our prayers and our airways for days. Do you realize we lost in the last 2 days 2 Sago mines? 2 of them. That's the magnitude of what's going on here, and too many people are focused on situations, well, we need to play ball, we need to do this, I'm not wearing a mask, whatever it may be. We've lost 2 Sago mines in the last 2 days. Some way, somehow, somebody's got to make a tough decision. I take the very, very best that I can possibly take as far as the recommendation. The recommendation all came to me that we need to stick with where we're at, and absolutely with all in me, I am willing to make those tough decisions. If everybody wants to put this right at my feet, they can. That's okay with me. I'll make the tough decisions because I'll do the right thing for our state.
All right, thank you, Brendan. Next to Paul Mullen with WCBC.
Good afternoon, Governor. Good afternoon, panel. On Veterans Day, I have a question for General Hoyer. First, I want to start with a thank you for your service, sir, and your guardsmen, and also to all military out there. We appreciate so much what you do. General, do you see any parallels between a traditional military operation and the battle against COVID-19? We see all kinds of those every day, and if you look at how we present information and how the governor runs the operation, we are focused in a military structured manner as to how we respond to things daily. We have regular daily and every other day updates that use joint task force constructs where DHHR and the National Guard and other agencies participate. So, Paul, I think it's similar to any type of war response that we have. I think maybe generally people don't see it that way, but that's how we focus it at the governor's level and our leadership level.
All right, thank you, Paul. Next to Junaid Dill with the AP.
Hi, Governor. Thanks, all. I wanted to ask, At this point, do you acknowledge Joe Biden's victory of the election? And if so, how do you plan to work with the president-elect's approach to the coronavirus pandemic? He has a task force and he wants to double down on mask wearing and testing, which is sort of what you've talked about as well. Are there areas of agreement or disagreement on his plan so far? Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, let me just say this, and this is not a bias towards the fact that I really supported our president. I really supported President Trump. I thought he did a lot of good things, and at some point in time along the way, there was things that President Trump did that Jim Justice wouldn't have done, and I'm sure that Jim Justice has done things that the President of the United States would have surely not done. But with all that, I would just say the reason I go into that is I tell you just this is not a bias because of how I feel about our president, but as far as acknowledging, that the election is over, I do not do that. And the reason I don't do that is because truly, with all in us, we want to absolutely know that the votes that were cast were legal votes. And we want our election process to be absolutely sound. We do not want to walk away and say, well, it really was rigged or this or that and everything else. We don't want that in America. And I hope to goodness that Joe Biden doesn't want that. Now, at the end of the day, we'll get to a conclusion about this in the very few, probably weeks and not days. But when we get to that conclusion, if Joe Biden is truly our elected president, I will support him with all of my soul. Without any question whatsoever, I absolutely support the fact of wearing masks and doing anything and everything we can to stop this dreaded killer. But absolutely without any question in the world, if Joe Biden is truly our legally elected president of the United States, we should all celebrate and support him. I am not going to sit on the sidelines and root for one or the other. You know where I stood, and absolutely I stood, staunch as I could be, with our president and everything, but absolutely all Americans should want. They should want with all in them to not walk away from an election in the United States of America for the President of the United States and sit around and say, well, the election was rigged. There was all these votes that shouldn't have been counted and everything else. We're not a banana republic. We're the United States of America. And for crying out loud, we need to absolutely know that and get to the bottom of this. And if the bottom leads us in another direction, we celebrate that. If the bottom leads us to where, Vice President Biden is the president, we need to celebrate that. I can't be any more clear. I am not going to run out and say today, that Vice President Biden won, because today we have a lot of doubt in our mind and we need to get to the bottom of it.
All right, thank you. Next to David Beard with the Dominion Post.
Hi, Dr. Marsh has already touched on my question. I read just while I was waiting for the briefing to start, I read just a two-sentence summary saying that just yesterday the CDC updated its guidance on masks, and it said that masks protect the wearer, and I think that what I read said the
This is Andrew Crafton. We've been showing you for quite a while this COVID-19 update out of West Virginia, and you saw Governor Jim Justice there speaking to reporters and speaking to his officials about the very, very high case rate there in the last few days in West Virginia and the number of hospitalizations there as well. But we want to just switch gears now. A lot of our Fox affiliates, our sister stations around the country, do their own content that we can play out here on NewsNOW from Fox, including topics on the coronavirus, topics on all things election 2020, and just diverse miscellaneous array of topics. So we want to play out some of that for you now going into this 9 o'clock hour here in Phoenix, Arizona. And like I said last night, NewsNOW from Fox is extending our live coverage going into 11 p.m. Mountain Time, 1 a.m. Eastern. So we'll be bringing you highlights from throughout the day, from earlier in the day, and what we showed you that we previously recorded for you before going into our overnight playlist of previously recorded content. So hope you enjoy this. This is going to be about an hour of various stories that our stations around the country, including Atlanta, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, have done today. And especially on this Veterans Day, November 11th, we want to thank all of those veterans who have served, who may be watching News Now from Fox. We are so grateful for your service, and we really appreciate it to our country. So thank you.
So we've got, the Supreme Court's taking up the case that's aiming to overturn the ACA today. So if that is the outcome, and first maybe talk about, I guess, the possible scenario, what it would look like, and how it would impact the people who are insured through the ACA.
Sure. So no one knows how the court is going to rule. I mean, we might have some guesses now that we've heard some of the line of questioning, but if the ACA is fully overturned, as the plaintiffs are arguing, then what would happen is that 20 million people who depend on the law for health insurance would lose that coverage, perhaps immediately, perhaps over some period of time. But on top of that, I think another question is kind of how does the healthcare system respond when the entire system, insurers, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, doctors, everyone is currently doing business based on the ACA. If it suddenly goes away without a replacement plan or without a lot of clarity about what the new law is going to look like, then it's hard for all of those businesses to, continue operating with stability.
In Texas, we have one of the highest, if not the highest, rate of people already uninsured. So what do you think this would look like for all the people in that, in that community that they were just barely, covered under the ACA, and now we'll have a much larger population without insurance here?
Yeah, well, Texas has the biggest uninsured population in the country. Part of that is that Texas is a big state. The other part is that Medicaid was not expanded in that state. So the people who would lose coverage in Texas would be the people who are buying on healthcare.gov, which is the exchange market or the marketplace it's sometimes called. A lot of people associate Obamacare with these markets. So that's the group who would lose coverage in Texas. But again, there's Texan hospitals and insurance companies and everyone else who is going to have to scramble if the law or if the court rules against the law.
That's my next question is, what will this do to the system in terms of, one, more demand on Medicaid, or two, hospitals that already have to write off when they do treat uninsured patients?
Yeah, so a lot of hospitals actually ended up doing better under the ACA because they used to have to see people regardless of their ability to pay. They still do, but under the ACA, a lot of those people who would have been uninsured are now either on Medicaid or on this state's exchange plan or healthcare.gov. And so hospitals could lose a lot of money from this ruling.
What are your thoughts or concerns about families just not having the health care that they need if they lose this coverage, especially in the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're not only in a pandemic, but we're facing, significant job losses that haven't fully recovered yet. And so those people who lost their jobs may have lost their job-based coverage. It's hard to know exactly how many people are uninsured or in need of the ACA right now because of the pandemic. But it's more important than ever to have health insurance coverage because you just really don't know when you might get sick.
Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, we've had just, more people that lost their employer provided insurance. So really, we're just looking at a larger community of people without healthcare coverage.
That's right. Yeah, this with the pandemic, we have not only a lot of people who lost their health coverage, but also a lot of people who maybe needed to get it before and now really need to get it because they, could get sick at any moment.
Is there a timeline that anyone might have if it's overturned, like when the coverage would stop? Is it the end of the year? Like, any thoughts on that?
It's kind of anybody's best guess. You know, it really depends on how the court rules. If the court does rule that the whole law is unconstitutional or that big parts of it are unconstitutional, then there's also the question of, well, how soon does that happen? And I think that could also depend on how the court rules. You know, the court could kick some decisions back to lower courts, which could draw the process out. It could make decisions immediately. But generally speaking, we'd expect some answer from the court probably by June of 2021.
Okay. And are there any other alternatives that low-income consumers could look at if they find that this is the case? That, you know, what do you do in that situation?
I mean, for the moment right now, everyone needs to make a healthcare decision based on what the current law is. So you need to look at your plan options based on what they are now. If the best option for you is to get coverage through the exchange markets or through healthcare.gov, then that's what you should do now. Later, if that option no longer exists, it's hard to say exactly what the options are going to look like because you can't just really push a button and completely unwind a law that's been in place for 10 years. But let's say that it looks similar to what existed before the ACA, then your coverage options might depend on your health status. So younger, healthier people could probably get coverage that, you know, might cover them in you know, assuming that they don't have a significant healthcare issue. But people who have heart conditions, diabetes, cancer, pregnant women, you know, anyone who has any kind of high cost condition might get, would basically have no coverage option.
Wow. Okay. Those are my questions. Anything else you want to add?
I would say that, you know, there's this question of severability, which basically means, can the rest of the law stand even though the individual mandate might be declared unconstitutional? And that seemed to be getting a lot of attention in the justices questioning today. So what would happen if the individual mandate was found unconstitutional, but it was severed from the rest of the law? Then that would mean that the rest of the ACA could stand. And for 2 years, going into a third year, we've already kind of been living in that world. We've already seen, you know, the penalty has been zeroed out, and it hasn't had much of a negative effect on how the ACA is working. So essentially, it seems like one option or one possible outcome of this case is that the mandate would be severed from the rest of the law. The mandate would be overturned. The rest of the law could stand.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
As we honor our veterans today, we want to remind you that Fox 13 is still trying to help ailing vets recover the benefits that they've rightfully earned. We launched our investigation into veterans' benefits during the VA scandal back in 2014. Craig Patrick has headed up that for us for years now and joins us now with perspective on what has changed since then, Craig, and what problems are still out there for veterans.
Hi there, Chris. Sure, absolutely. In terms of the trajectory, the Department of Veterans Affairs has clearly made progress year by year in the past 6 years. But we also, along the way, have found a number of cases of veterans across the Tampa Bay region who are still slipping through the cracks for a variety of reasons. So to get a sense of why and what's happening, let's go back in time to 6 years ago to when the national scandal struck and how we found out about it.
They were basically directing us to pretty much go exactly opposite of what the regulations state.
Nick McSwain was a VA scheduler who helped us uncover excessive delays for veterans' health care and medical appointments hidden or lost.
Literally pushed in a drawer?
Yeah.
For the past 6 years, we've investigated waste and neglect and veterans who died waiting for care and benefits they earned.
For them to come back here and be treated like that at really the only place that they have.
But the scandals of 2014 gave way to reforms through 2 administrations. And along the way, we investigated a number of lapses in veterans' care or benefits and helped some get the support they were due. And in an effort to reduce wait times for medical care, Congress passed the Choice Act under President Obama, and President Trump kept it going. It's supposed to allow veterans to seek timely care outside the VA if they live more than 40 miles away from a VA center.
There's VA Choice, where our veterans no longer have to wait for endless hours, days, even months.
But we have found some cases where it does not work as intended. For example, we investigated the case of a veteran in Winter Haven who had to stay in the VA system because there was a VA center in Lakeland within 40 miles of his home. but it was not equipped to meet his medical needs. So he had to drive from Winter Haven to Lakeland, then back to Winter Haven to wait for a referral to Tampa, then back to Winter Haven just to see a doctor. That's just one example that highlights the call for additional reforms. Meanwhile, Congress and President Trump did make a stronger commitment to mental health services for veterans. The new measures boost mental health research and staffing at the VA. It also directs federal inspectors to audit existing services to determine how effective they are and to what extent and how they could be improved. And the most recently passed measures also allocate in grant money an additional $174 million to local governments and to states across the nation to help reduce and prevent suicides among veterans, which of course is a crisis we've all kept our eyes on, with statistics showing roughly 20 veterans a day sadly lose their lives this way. And with that, those are monies intended to improve counseling and find ways through research to try to prevent it.
Yeah, and let's truly hope that that money does have that impact and improves the lives of veterans as it's supposed to. We owe so much to them. Craig, what does President-elect Biden plan to do to build on progress that's been made over the last few years and continue to improve veterans' health care?
Well, in terms of goals, President-elect Biden and President Trump's goals are very much in line. They're very much the same. What Biden is saying is that he wants to commit more resources to addressing the suicide crisis, to mental health counseling, as President Trump has done. He wants to build on it. He also speaks a great deal about cutting red tape, particularly those who move from active duty into the VA system so that the Pentagon and VA health systems communicate better with each other. The idea is to streamline bureaucracy and to commit additional resources to mental health counseling and educational opportunities and job training.
Improving the lives of those who gave part of their lives to this country seems to be one of those rare issues that both parties can align on and get something done. Thank you, Craig.
Election results are not official until the Electoral College meets next month, and with legal challenges still happening and with several states not being called yet, at least 3 of them anyway, we want to find out what are the odds that President Trump could flip the outcome of the election. So we bring in Josh Blackman, professor of law with South Texas College of Law. Josh, thanks so much for your time this morning. The president remains adamant, and his supporters, that they will win. Do you see a path forward for him at this point?
I'm very skeptical. At this point, Joe Biden has a pretty substantial margin. And even if all of President Trump's lawsuits were successful, I still don't think it would flip enough votes to alter the outcome of the election. I think at this point, there's not really a path forward for Donald Trump.
Everyone is looking for in his party that proof of widespread voter fraud. What kind of proof would the president and his team need to show?
So far, they've alleged these perhaps small irregularities where things were not done perhaps exactly as they should have been, but it's not clear that the way things were done were illegal. Really, what he would need to show is that thousands of votes were just thrown in the garbage, or thousands of votes were forged, or that tens of thousands of votes were just dumped inside the box without checking with anyone first. The sorts of things they're alleging really aren't enough to disqualify tens of thousands of votes. I mean, these are people who, in good faith, cast a ballot. Perhaps it wasn't done exactly as things were supposed to be done, but the rules aren't always entirely clear in these cases about how a vote's supposed to be cast.
So without showing thousands of votes that were cast illegally, that would not be enough, just 100, 200 here or there to flip a state.
That's correct. These sorts of legal challenges work when the margin of victory is a few hundred votes. They don't work when the margin of victory is a few thousand votes, or tens of thousands of votes, or hundreds of thousands of votes.
President-elect Joe Biden right now calling it an embarrassment that President Trump will not concede. Do you know, is he required to concede the election for the transition to happen?
There's no requirement that the president concede. Frankly, things can move forward whenever Joe Biden wants to. There are certain things that only happen when the administration says, okay, we're done here. So there's certain funding amounts that are released to Joe Biden, certain intelligence classified reports that are given. So that hasn't happened yet. So there are certain things that Biden can't do, but really it doesn't matter at this point. Joe Biden will keep plugging along, and come January 20th, the Chief Justice, John Roberts, will swear in Joe Biden.
And finally, Josh, just one question about the results being certified. That's expected to happen soon and in several states. Is it possible that certification of the results could be withheld and that the president would have some sort of way to delay what is perhaps the inevitable even more?
The lawsuits that Trump has been filing seek that remedy. They seek to stop the certification process. So far, the courts have not been interested in canceling out thousands of votes. So I think at this point, certification will happen the next few weeks. And by mid-December, the Electoral College will meet and the result will be settled.
Josh Bachman with South Texas College of Law. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you so much for joining me, Chris. I caught the attention of Smart Cups scrolling on Instagram, and I saw Dogface drinking cranberry juice, or whatever drink it was, out of a cup. So I wanted to find out a little bit more about what exactly Smart Cups is, because something apparently has not been done before.
Yeah, so it's never been done before. Smart Cups is a sustainability-driven technology company. It provides a solution that decreases storage and transportation requirements, which in turn will reduce our carbon footprints. So what we have is the ability to print active and flavor materials on the surface of substrates. It's meant to be a drug delivery system, but we commercialize it in the beverage industry just to show consumer acceptance and adoption. So when we saw Dogface riding on his skateboard with a big, bulky Ocean Spray cranberry bottle, we said, well, that's a perfect application for what it is that we can do. So.
Okay, and tell me about how it works, because I saw some of the videos, and just tell me what it is so it's a paper, so it's a cup, and so the cup comes with the ingredients in it. So
correct, and so it's important to note that we do not make the physical cups. Our energy drink line is printed in cups sourced from Fabri-Kal. They're a plant-based bioplastic. They're not regular plastic cups. Okay. But we can print on paper, we can print on aluminum, we can print on pretty much any surface. We've printed on tortillas, chicken and cheese flavor on tortillas. We've printed marshmallow and chocolate on graham crackers. We've printed caffeine on gum. I can print on your face if you really wanted me to. And so we've printed on shirt. A couple weeks ago, I had an ex-NBA player who came into Smart Cups and asked me if I could print gold. And so that's what we did. We printed gold. And so the way the technology works is we take the ingredients with our proprietary technology, and we create somewhat of a shell around the ingredients. The shell does a really nice job at adhering to surfaces. And when it comes into contact with liquid, it activates, releasing those ingredients. And so that's how you have a beverage in a few seconds.
So all of these different products that you've mentioned, are they all activated by water? Is that the component that kind of sets them into whatever motion they're supposed to be?
Correct. Either activation through water or really any liquid. So your saliva, for example.
Okay, and that activates maybe the tortillas that you mentioned? Is that what?
Correct. Yep. So if we were to print, for example, caffeine on the surface of a gum, or the flavor component of gum. A lot of times the flavor component gets lost in the gum matrix. And so you get about 60 to 70%, you get the full flavor profile. By printing on the surface of gum, you get the full flavor profile. It becomes activated by your saliva. And that's just one example. But and I want to go back. It's important to note that we're not a cup company and we're not an energy drink company. What we are is a sustainable technology solutions company. And so we have the ability to print active and flavor materials on any surface. And we can do everything from kids drinks to alcoholic beverages. We have the ability to do OTC products, prescription medications, personal healthcare products, such as cough syrup, vaccinations, antibiotics, cosmetics, hand sanitizer, just to name a few.
Okay, so it's just so fascinating, you know, just so you're basically the ingredients of anything. So
correct.
So let's just say a gum, for example. You take the gum and you can put anything in the gum. So the gum company will have the gum ready, and your business comes in and does the printing on whatever ingredients they want the gum to taste like, or whatever
Correct.
flavor. Okay.
Correct. And so the benefit of that is the reduction of storage and transportation requirements. And so, for example, the delivery truck that once could only deliver 96,000 12-ounce cans of a product could now deliver 1.2 million units of the very same product using Smart Cups technology. So you're almost getting a 10x on that. So you're getting more product and more resources out to people in less trips. We have a pretty rich pipeline as well. We have a water purification system that we can print inside of cups. So now imagine, instead of sending a case of 24 bottles of water to Africa or Flint, Michigan, or Puerto Rico, for example, you would send that same case size with 500 to 1,000 cups with the water purification system printed inside. And they would deliver it. They'd use their existing water supply, put it in the cup, and then have potable water. And so those are some of the long-term applications that we're developing at Smart Cups.
Wow. So I'm pretty sure someone had thought about this before, but you guys are the first one to.
I think Willy Wonka thought about it with the schnozberries.
That's what I was wondering. And I promise I was going, Violet, is that Violet? They're giving you different little, tell me about the reference to the Willy Wonka, because that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, so I always tell people, you know, that wallpaper from Willy Wonka, we can make that wallpaper. And it's important to note that in every formulation that we come out with, every product, when we formulate, we think about health and nutrition, and we'd like to create as healthy and delicious as products as possible and bring those to market. It's not so much just, hey, here's a sustainable technology. We do understand that people are more conscientious about the sugars that they put in their bodies, organic, pesticide free. And so we really do strive to go above and beyond and sourcing the best possible ingredients for the products that we're rolling out with. And by 2021, our goal is to have an alcoholic product onto market. We're already experimenting with printing wines and tequilas, and so it's the next couple months are going to be very exciting.
They sound very exciting right now. It just seems like the possibilities are endless on what you can get your hands on and what you can kind of take a step out of.
Smart Cups technology has the ability to completely change the way we package consumables, whether it be detergent, cosmetics, shampoo, mouthwash. We can do all those products. And what I'm most passionate about is the water purification application that I mentioned to you previously, plus the ability to be able to transport more vitamins and minerals and life-saving medications to people around the world in fewer trips. So the plane, when there's a disaster or there's a disaster somewhere, we can deliver more in a plane or in a truck than we previously could.
And what are some of the companies and businesses in the industry saying to you about this when you're presenting them with it?
It's funny when people see our Smart Cup on social media, and we deal with this. People have a knee-jerk reaction. They say, "Oh, this is a plastic cup. Oh, you're ruining the environment." We're not ruining the environment. It's actually quite opposite. And so for us, an upstart company with a rich pipeline of innovation, I think people need to look at the bigger picture. First, we're not a cup company, like I mentioned. We use a plant-based bioplastic cup. And there's so much data around plastic and emissions, but there's not a lot of data around what liquid transportation does to our environment, how that impacts climate change. And so that's why we've partnered up with some prestigious research universities to go study what liquid transportation does to our environment and what the elimination or reduction of liquid transportation would do to our environment.
Welcome back. The Braxtons are back for an emotional season 7 of their hit reality show Braxton Family Values. Fans can follow along for a big bachelorette party and a big wedding that's sure to have at least a little bit of drama. Take a look.
Been doing it for years.
Is mommy sitting with daddy? No. Daddy's gonna be sitting with his wife, Wanda. I'm not gonna have him. I'm not gonna do that. Am I sitting at daddy table? You can sit at whatever table you want to, Wanda. Because we had a whole seat. Remember, we did the whole seating chart, but I don't even think I care about the seating chart anymore. Just sit where you want to sit.
You know, I am thrilled that I get to sit wherever I want with whomever I want, but no seating arrangements. Okay, there's a few combos of people who should not be sitting together at the same table. Call daddy, Miss Wanda, mom. So I'm going to keep calm on the inside, you know, and I'm just praying that everything's going to go smoothly.
Of course, of course. Joining us now to talk more about this all-new season is Tawanda Braxton. Tawanda, good morning.
Good morning, beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to dig in first to the hard stuff here. Let's get that out of the way. And this season starts off with a very serious family crisis, showing the rest of the family reacting to the public news that Tamar attempted suicide this summer. Very tough topic. And there's been criticism about even including that very personal mental health crisis. But ultimately, why did you as a family feel like it was so important to address it?
You know, it was important because we needed for everyone to see how we found out and how we reacted. We would have done our fans and the viewers a disservice if we didn't touch on that at all. So it's almost like you darn if you do, you darn if you don't. But we felt that it was the right thing to do to let everybody know how it affected us as a family.
And we know there's been a lot of public back and forth. Are you guys in communication with Tamar now? How is she doing? So many people want to know.
Yes, Tamar is doing good. You know, she has good days. She has great days. Actually, we just saw her about 4 weeks ago, she and Logan. So, you know, we definitely stay in communication with Tamar. We love Tamar. We're a family. And that's, you know, that's just what we do is stick together.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And so many people out there, of course, wishing her well. And despite that really heavy tone of the show and the start of the show, there really was some celebrating to be done this season. And that features Trina's bachelorette party and wedding. So what can we expect from some of those, you know, funner moments?
Yes, we're having a ball, Katie. Let me tell you, Trina's bachelorette party was epic. It was amazing, of course, because I planned it, but we had so much fun. We went back to the basics of Braxton Family Values, like season 1, how we're having a lot of fun, we're giggling, we're making up songs, and we're actually getting along. You know, it was a lot of fun times to celebrate Trina and Vaughn for their wedding.
Well, and absolutely, that's what we love too, is that family unit that comes back and is always, you know, coming in and having some fun and you know, reminding us of why you guys love each other so much. And I also want to catch up on your love life, because you made headlines recently with a surprise ring on your left finger and a secret engagement, perhaps. So I can't see your hand right now, but will you be the next one down the aisle?
I don't know. You never know. You just going to have to watch Braxton Family Values on Thursday nights on WeTV. And also, please stay tuned with our YouTube channel. It's called King Ladybug. You'll be able to see the ins and outs of our relationship, too. So that's my honey, and I love him.
Okay, keeping us on our toes there. I understand. I get it. Well, and you also have a new skincare line, so congratulations on that and all that hard work behind that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are you still pursuing acting, or has it been something that, with the pandemic, with so much going on, that it's maybe been put on the back burner a little bit?
I am still doing acting. I actually just did 2 independent movies while we were in pandemic, and you know, we went by the COVID rules of having to get tested every 2 days, and everyone had to wear their mask on set. It's definitely a different type of temperature being on set now. But yeah, I'm really excited about everything with acting, with my T. Braxton skincare line and King Ladybug YouTube. So I'm staying busy, which is amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like you're staying very busy. Well, we can't wait to stay tuned for those projects and, of course, for the season 7 for sure. Tawanda, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day. And our thanks also to WeTV for providing production assistance with today's interview. Season 7 of Braxton Family Values is Thursday nights at 9 on WeTV.
Welcome back. Well, if you feel like you've been harassed or misled by debt collectors, the federal government just issued new rules that clarify how debt collectors can communicate with consumers. Fox 5 team's Dana Fowle is here to get us up to speed on this and some pretty big changes. Dana, good morning.
Yeah, there are some big changes, but let me lay a little groundwork first. Debt collectors have jobs to do too. It is okay to collect money that's owed from old debts, but sometimes, as we know, lines are crossed and consumers tell us, they feel harassed and abused, misled. But the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is from the 70s, and it needed to be updated. And here's what the new landscape will look like in the fall of 2021. Debt collectors can now reach out to you, not just by telephone, the old-fashioned way, but by modern ways too. Text, email, and social media direct messages. Now, you have a right, once contacted, to eliminate some of those communication lines. Say social media, for example. If you don't really use it, you might not want important messages left there. Tell them, don't contact me here. Here's another new rule. You can't be contacted more than 7 times per week through phone calls. And once you've had a conversation with the debt collector, they can't reach out to you again for another 7 days. But here we go. This rule does not apply to the new communication. Texts, DMs, or emails. I know. The feds only say that the contact can't be excessive enough to be considered harassment or abuse. Well, in my head, that's a gray area, so we'll just have to see how that plays out. And here's another issue. The new rules only apply to third-party debt collectors. If it's the original creditor, same rules do not apply. Elise?
Interesting. Okay, so one way to make it stop is to work out a deal with your creditor?
Yeah, the first thing you want to do if you start getting these calls is to make and create a payment plan. But first, you've got to do this. You have to ask for proof of who this creditor is, how much money is owed, and when this debt occurs. You need a physical proof of this, because there is a chance, this is not infrequent, this happens, there is a chance that the debt may have been paid off before the third party bought this debt and tried to collect it. So don't pay a dime until they can give you proof of this debt. That will save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
And I've heard from a lot of people, actually, Dana, that's happened to them, that they had paid it off before this company reached out to them. So I'm so glad you mentioned that's worth checking on just to be sure.
Absolutely. That is not an unusual circumstance. These debts can get old. They get paid down the line. You paid it way over here years ago. They don't know it, and you don't want to pay it twice.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, good to know. Good to check on, too. All right, Dana, thanks so much for the help. We appreciate it.
We have spent months being bombarded by messages about how to stay safe during the pandemic.
But which ones are really worth listening to, or which ones are we listening to for that matter? As the Fox Medical team's Beth Galvin explains, a recent study shows the source of the message really matters.
UNC Chapel Hill researcher behind this study says she got the idea for it from a postcard she got in the mail back in the springtime with some pandemic safety tips, and it was credited to both the CDC and the White House. And that got her wondering which public health messages are most effective right now based on where they're coming from.
For months, we've been bombarded by health messages to wear a mask, wash our hands, keep our distance, stay home, avoid crowds. But does the source of these messages really matter? UNC School of Medicine's Dr. Marcella Boynton and a team of researchers set out to answer that question.
We actually had a pool of over 2,500 different messages.
Back in June, they asked volunteers to read and rate 5 pandemic safety messages that they had credited to different sources.
For example, you might have rated a message that said, protect the people you love, wear a mask. This message is brought to you by President Donald Trump.
Another message would read,
slow the spread, stay 6 feet apart from others. This message was brought to you by the Centers for Disease Control.
The study participants came from a cross-section of political and social backgrounds, but across the board, Dr. Boynton says they rated the messages credited to health agencies like the CDC or state or local health departments the most effective.
And what we found was for messages that included President Donald Trump as the message source or President Donald Trump and the CDC, those messages were less effective and created more negative reactions to that message than citing the CDC, than citing a local health department or state health department. So there's something about adding President Donald Trump's name to that message really decreased its effectiveness and increased negative reactions to those messages.
And Dr. Boynton is continuing to study public health messaging during the pandemic, but she says this study clearly shows that people put more weight into advice coming from public health officials than they do politicians. For your Fox Medical team, I'm Beth Galvin.
All right, with the holidays rapidly approaching, airlines are bracing for an uptick in traffic.
So for many people, it could be their first trip back on an airplane in months. Joining us live with what you can expect on your next flight is Thrifty Traveler Editor-in-Chief Kyle Potter. Nice to see you, Kyle.
Yeah, you as well.
If you are flying for the first time since the pandemic began, as many people will for the holidays, what should people be aware of and brace themselves for?
You know, I keep coming back to what my friend Gilbert said about flying today, and he said it's kind of like an awkward first date. It's kind of uncomfortable. People don't really know what to do because this is, such a strange new world. But, a couple of things. The service on planes is generally speaking pretty bare bones, so don't expect to get anything more than a bottle of water and maybe a snack. And now airlines have done such a good job at cutting back how much they're flying to match just how few people are flying in the country today, despite all of the growth, despite the hopes that, more people are going to travel during the holidays, that unless if you're flying with an airline that is blocking middle seats, you should pretty much expect at this point that your flight is going to be full.
Okay, that's something to keep aware of. And there are obviously still airlines that are blocking middle seats, and every airline's kind of doing things a little differently. So what are the big differences in, I'd say, the main four or main five?
Yeah, the biggest thing, as I touched on, is middle seats. So Delta is still blocking middle seats, and they say they'll do it at least through early January. Southwest has said that they are still blocking middle seats, but that will stop at the end of the month here. And then some smaller airlines like JetBlue and Alaska are also blocking middle seats. Meanwhile, American and United are not blocking middle seats and haven't for many months. So that's the big thing to keep in mind. And then again, the service that you get on each airline can vary greatly. The order that you get on the plane when you board, some airlines like Delta are boarding from back to front and in rows of just a few at a time, while others like American, at least in my experience, really haven't changed the boarding order to try to limit how passengers pass each other while getting on and off the plane. So it really just depends, probably more than ever, what airline you fly with now. So it really behooves you to do your research if you're concerned getting on a plane.
Okay, so before you get on the plane, you have to get through the airport. What would you recommend for people? Do you think the TSA pre-check or clear is a good idea?
I think so, but those aren't free. A TSA pre-check membership costs $85 for 5 years. The starting price for clear starts at $179 for 1 year. So these are not cheap. So I would say, do the math. Think about, not just 2020, but 2021 and far beyond, and ask yourself, is it worth, that $85 for me, depending on how I hope to travel for the next 5 years? But, no question, I have both TSA PreCheck and Clear, and, I value both of those probably now more than ever, because it does really speed up that time standing in whatever line may exist at the airport.
So, Kyle, I follow you on Twitter, and I know you hopped on a couple of planes maybe a month or two ago for the first time in a while. Obviously, everyone has to wear masks. It's pretty much a mandate for all the airlines and most airports. What is the key to making it as the most comfortable experience as possible? Because let's face it, wearing a mask for many hours is not exactly a pleasant experience.
I think the biggest thing is to pack several masks and pack several different kinds of masks. When I have traveled for work, I've had an N95 mask in my bag as well as a good cloth mask. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially once you get up in the air. An N95 mask for some people might be a little bit harder to breathe through as the air gets thinner. So you may want to, have that backup available, not just if you want to be more comfortable, but also, things happen, masks break, and you don't want to be mid-flight and have a little tie break off, and all of a sudden you don't have a mask, which is against airline regulations right now. So that's the biggest thing, is just to be prepared and have a backup.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Carry a couple masks at least when you're traveling. So we know, okay, so some people might make reservations and for whatever reason they have to cancel. Are airlines still as flexible with those cancellations?
Yeah, absolutely. It really depends on when you book your ticket, but what we're really focused on right now is 2021 travel. And right now you can book airline tickets all the way out through November of next year. And every major airline in the United States now says if you buy a ticket before the end of the year, December 31st, we will allow you to change that ticket for free, no questions asked, without paying that normal $200 change fee, or you can cancel it and get a voucher. So that's huge. That gives everyone who's trying to figure out how to rescue their canceled trips from 2020 and replan something for 2021 some peace of mind that they can book some plane tickets for 2021 and not get stuck holding the bag if it turns out that those plans aren't going to pan out. And there have been some really amazing deals, really that far out into 2021, out into the fall and even kind of early winter travel period. So it is truly one of the best times to start planning future travel.
And as a customer, hopefully they continue that well beyond our current pandemic level. That would be nice moving forward. All right, Kyle Potter, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kyle. For all of your latest travel news and deals, you can visit thethriftytraveler.com.
The holiday shopping season already looks different this year. The pandemic, recession, and record unemployment have some feeling more like the Grinch. And joining us live with the 4 things we can do to make the season merrier and brighter, we need that, Justin Halverson from Great Waters Financial. Justin, good morning to you.
Hey, Tom. Good morning to you as well.
First off, what are we seeing when it comes to holiday shopping? What are the trends this year?
I think overall it's kind of expected, right? We're seeing a lot more happening online with the pandemic, as well as with the shift we've been seeing over the years. People are moving more and more to online shopping, and we're seeing deals come out even sooner than Black Friday. People are starting to shop earlier. 30% of people have already gotten a jump on their holiday shopping. And the experts tell us that we're going to spend a little less this year. Tom, they say about $50 less per person. The reason being, we may not buy gifts for ourselves this year.
Oh, I would like to say that that's happened in our house. I cannot say
bad idea. Bad idea. I'm just saying that's what the experts are saying.
To help navigate the shopping season, you advise making your list early. So tell us about that.
Yeah, Tom, just like planning for retirement, right? You list out your income, your expenses, your assets, your liabilities. Let's plan for the holidays. They come every single year, and oftentimes we get caught off guard and we're scrambling and we spend too much. So make your list early. List out all the people you're looking to shop for, how much you're looking to spend overall, and then make those things match up. And how much can you spend per person? And you may have to make some cuts. You may have to trim back per person. You may have to cut some people off the list. But Tom, I'd like to just give people permission out there to know that people aren't expecting certain gifts from you. And if they are, that's not the kind of friend or family member you want. And so give because you want to give, because you care, and do it within your budget and your list.
Boy, that's a good way to put it, too. And the one thing I always try to think about, how much do I have to spend? And I do use the credit card, but I always know that I'm going to be able to pay that off at the end of the month. But that's where we can get into trouble, is using credit this time of year.
It sure is, Tom. And I'm not one of the financial professionals that says never use a credit card. I know some people say that. I'm for using it wisely. And it's just like you said, it's use it for convenience, use it for the security, get the points, get the miles, but pay it off at the end of the month. Because if you don't, the interest starts to rack up quickly. Yeah. And the last thing you want to do is enter the new year trying to pay for last year's holiday shopping. That's just not a good way to enter into 2021.
No question. And then you also say consider alternative gifts that make a positive impact on your finances.
Absolutely. For some of you, you're crafty. You can make things. You can be, you can be good that way. But the one I'm going to give you, it almost makes me feel like the dentist that gives out dental floss and toothbrushes for Halloween a little bit. But the smart gift you could give for the younger people in your life is a 529 plan, a contribution to a 529 plan. It's a way to accumulate money tax-free for educational expenses, and it's getting them a head start on their future as well. We got a great list on our website, greatwatersfinancial.com, of all the good 529 plans available, and we're happy to help as well.
We've had them for both of our girls, and they are paying off big time. All right, Justin, great to chat with you on this Wednesday, and hope the family is well and you are well, and good seeing you. That's Justin Halverson from Great Waters Financial. You bet. For more information, you can head to Justin's website. It's greatwatersfinancial.com. That's greatwatersfinancial.com.
Well, despite their volume in the workforce, millennials have the least amount of wealth of any generation, but there are ways to turn that around and stop living paycheck to paycheck. Personal finance expert Anthony O'Neill joins us live with the steps that we can take, and it's good to see you, Anthony. Good morning.
Good to see you, Elise. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, so you've got some stats that I'll be honest with you. When I went over those before this interview, they were shocking. So can you share some of those with us?
Oh, man, I'm surprised that they're shocking. But here's number one that millennials can do is they can live below their means. Now, listen, 2020 has been a rough year for all of us, but we can turn things around. Now, millennials think to build wealth, you got to have a large income. Well, here's the truth of the fact. You don't need a large income. You need margin. How much money will you have at the end of the month? I would rather you look like you don't look like you have a lot of money and actually have a lot of money. A study came out and showed that millennials have about $27,000 in consumer debt, which doesn't include their mortgage. So how do we do this? How do we live below our means? And 2 practical steps I can give you right now. Number 1, instead of your rent, make sure your rent and your mortgage is less than 25% of your take-home pay. And instead of buying a new car, purchase a used car.
Yeah, I mean, things that we can do, no doubt. I know that there's some more that you suggest too, just getting on a budget. And this is something that we talk about a lot with Dana Fowle from our investigative team here. It's tough, and a lot of people have never been on a budget. So do you have any tips for getting on that and for sticking to it, Anthony?
I sure do. You know, the late Zig Ziglar said, aim at nothing, you'll hit that every time. And it's the same thing when it comes to our money. If we do not tell our money where to go, we're going to be wondering where did it go. So what I want you to do is get on a zero-based budget. And remember that your income is your number one tool. It's your number one asset when it comes to building true wealth. So how do you do that? You go ahead and list your income, minus your expenses, and make sure it equals out to 0. Once you do that, you stick to that budget and you do not budge at all.
That's the hard part, right? The no budging on the budget. That's what we have to make sure that we do. Another thing that you say we can do to help out, Anthony, is increase your income. So what are some ways that we can accomplish that?
You know, when it comes to increasing your income, a lot of people are saying, Anthony, I'm already living below my means, but I'm still struggling. And if that is the case, then this means we need to actually increase your income. Now, money flows 2 ways. It flows in and it flows out. So let's fix that. How can we do that? We can get maybe a side hustle. We can deliver pizza. We can drive for Uber or Lyft. Or maybe if you're an educated individual, let's say you're good with math or maybe good with SAT scores, and consider tutoring right now, especially during this pandemic time. But it's going to require you to get creative, and it's going to require some self-discipline. And to me, self-discipline is the bridge between where we are today and where we want to go tomorrow.
The bridge. What a great way to describe that. Something else you say that we need to do is get out of debt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Debt is just a thief. I believe it just robs you of your future. But before you get out of debt, I want you to go ahead and set aside a $1,000 emergency fund and then get out of debt using the debt snowball. So here's the secret to that. It's not really a secret, it's a fact. You're going to line up all your debt from smallest to largest, and it doesn't matter about the interest rate. Make all your minimum payments and then go ahead and attack the very first one there. Then once you get done with the first one, just repeat that process until you get out of debt, until you paid off all your debt. But to learn more about how to really do this and how to budget better and how to really get ahead financially, I want you to visit DaveRamsey.com/hope, and there's a free 7-day trial to help you out throughout your journey.
I want to ask you about this. I mean, it seems like money matters are something that you're not really taught about a lot in school. It's kind of something you just have to figure out yourself or have experts give you some tips. How did you I guess, discover that this was an area that you were interested in and that you were good at?
You know, Elise, you're absolutely right. It saddens me that this is not taught in our schools, but that's why I'm here. Actually, I have a program that I'm releasing out actually in 2020 to where we are actually getting into more high schools. But when it comes to me, myself, I actually learned the hard way. I was homeless at the age of 19, $35,000 in debt, sleeping in the back of my car, and I had to teach myself the financial education, which is why I'm here today to help millennials and specifically young people in high school, in middle school, to help them avoid the mistakes that I've made. So we have a curriculum in high schools right now called Foundations in Personal Finance. And so we're on this mission together.
Hey, sounds like you've come a long way. Anthony, thanks so much for sharing your story and for providing some tips for us as well. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Atlanta.
And our thanks to Ramsey Solutions for providing production assistance with today's interview with Anthony. For more on Anthony O'Neill, you can go to fox5atlanta.com. Just look for the viewer information story. We are a little more than 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving, and this week we'll be talking about ways to travel and celebrate as safely as possible. This morning we start with tips for families with college-age students who may be heading home for the first time. And Fox Medical Team's Beth Galvin joins us live. So Beth, good morning to you. And what do students need to be doing, and really when should they start? I'm guessing now is when they need to start.
Yes, Elise, you know, the American College Health Association came out with some guidelines for college students and their families who are going to be reunited for Thanksgiving, and many of them will be staying home, you know, until the winter holidays, until January. And, you know, they've started by saying you need to start thinking about this 2 weeks out before you head home, before Thanksgiving, to start thinking about how you can be as careful as you possibly can as a college student transitioning back into your family. So that means you get your flu shot now, they're recommending. You do everything that you can to minimize your contact and your risk of exposure with people who live outside your home at school. And that means that you're wearing a mask. That means that you're social distancing. That means that you're limiting contact with people who are outside your very small circle of friends at college. And the point of that, Elise, is just to try as much as possible to limit the risk of getting exposed now as you're heading home, because we know that in many states, not so much here in Georgia, although we're seeing a little bit of an increase in disease, many states are getting hit really hard. So if you're an out-of-state college student who's coming home to Georgia, you don't want to bring that home to your family. So you want to start 2 weeks out, really being as careful as you can. You may want to consider getting tested for COVID-19 before you come home, especially if you have someone high risk in your family. But you just also need to know that those tests are not foolproof, that they can sometimes tell you that you are negative when you're positive, and you know, so you can't completely rely on the test. You can take the test, but you need to rely on those other safety steps too, Elise.
So once students get home, how can they transition as safely as possible?
So the Health Association is recommending people be really strict about this. And they're saying that if you can, you need to quarantine for 14 days coming back into your home as a college student. That's not going to be possible for everybody, but here's a little bit of what that would look like. Quarantining means that you basically act like you are sick, although you're home. And so that means that you eat privately on your own, or if you're going to eat with your family, you eat outdoors with your family, that you wear a mask when you're in your home, that you stay 6 feet apart from your family members when you're in your home, and that you use separate eating utensils and plates and glasses and things like that. And the reason for that, Elise, is that if you can do it, we know that this disease typically runs its course in about 14 days. So when people are exposed to this virus, they say, you know, spend 14 days isolating or quarantining rather, and, you know, to try to avoid infecting others around you. That's what college students are trying to do. That's not always going to be possible. If you have the time to do that, the association is really recommending doing that.
Okay, what if you don't? What if you can't quarantine? What should you do?
You just need to be careful. I think that you really need to avoid physical contact, especially for those first couple of weeks. So you need to avoid hugging. You need to avoid kissing. You need to avoid shaking hands with people, you know, especially around Thanksgiving, even though that's hard. Keeping your distance, wearing a mask, and you're doing that for 14 days. So you may not be fully quarantining, but you're being just as careful as you can be. And that's so important, at least, because we know that college students are young, that they're healthy, that they're typically going to do very well with this virus, but they can also bring the virus back into their community, back into their homes, where they may have older people they come in contact with. They may have a grandmother who lives in the home. They may be planning to get together with older relatives for Thanksgiving. So you need to be thinking about not infecting those more vulnerable people in your life.
Yeah, it needs to be on the forefront of all of our minds, no doubt. All right, Beth, thanks so much for the help this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Elise.
Ladies, many of us dream about this day from the time we were little girls walking down the aisle at our wedding. But for some, the financial burden attached to saying yes to the dress is overwhelming. But one Nonprofit organization is helping save the day. Brides Across America has made dreams come true for thousands of brides by gifting them with free wedding gowns. Each year, the nonprofit hosts Operation Wedding Gown Giveaway for our military and first responders. And joining us right now with more on this special event, Nadeja Felton. And good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Nadeja.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. This is just a wonderful organization. Tell us first about the history of Brides Across America and why it was started and the importance of it.
So Brides Across America was started back in 2008 by Heidi Jansen. It was created basically to give the people who basically risk their lives every day for our country a chance to come in and shop for different gowns. The gowns are free. It's a big nonprofit organization. The event is very, very big. We have vendors that come to the store all the time. We give out food and things like that. This is just one of the gowns that will be in Brides Across America. So even though the gowns are free, we do offer great, good quality gowns like this one, which is a very, very sleek, slim silhouette gown. So these are just everything that we have to offer for the event.
What store are you at right now?
We are at Belfiore Bridal, located in Marietta, Georgia.
So they're participating in the event.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And if we do it twice a year, either July 4th, which is Independence Day, or Veterans Day.
So tell us what happens the day of Operation Wedding Gown Giveaway.
So on the day of Operation Wedding Gown Giveaway, the brides come in, they fill out paperwork just letting us know what type of job they're doing, either frontline workers, first responders, or military brides. They bring in their information, they come in, they shop for an hour, look for gowns. They are by size, and then from then on, they get to check out and hopefully go home with the dress of their choice.
Have you participated in an event in the past?
Yes, I actually started here over a year ago as an intern. During my first time doing it, it was in November. The same time last year, it was very, very fun. And I was back again in July to do the event this year when we did it. And we've given away over $40,000 in dresses.
Wow. Tell us about how rewarding it is for you just to see the smiles on the faces of these soon-to-be brides and getting these free dresses.
It feels so good because they're so happy. Like, it brings them to tears to know that they're able to celebrate and go. Because I know, like, schedules are always busy, especially now during the COVID time. Like, people don't have time to make the time to go and shop for gowns. So it makes them very, very excited. Like, it's a good feeling to know that you're giving back to people who do the same for you every day.
And you were just talking about the pandemic, of course, COVID-19. Are there any safety precautions, anything that's going to be in place for those who are going to be coming? What do we need to know?
Yes, ma'am. So we do understand that we will have a lot of nurses and stuff in the building. So we do require that everybody wear masks. We have hand sanitizers on stand. We do spray down our dresses just to keep them clean. So, like, just basically your everyday COVID standings.
So do you actually pick the deserving participants, or they just all kind of show up and then you just look at their paperwork and see if they are eligible for it?
So you register through the Brides Across America website. You have to pay $50 for the registration fee, and then you call us and we schedule you on the schedule for the appointment for that day.
Okay, and once again, it's going to be taking place when and what they need to bring with them?
It's going to be tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. All you have to do is bring your formal ID showing that you're either first responder, frontline worker, or military. All your paperwork information. At least try to arrive 15 minutes early from your appointment time so that you can fill out all of the necessary paperwork. We're located in East Cobb, Marietta, Georgia, off of Johnson Ferry Road. You can just give us a phone call at 770-509-7185 if you do want to schedule an appointment.
And these dresses are just beautiful, and they range in price from... The prices range from what again?
The price range for our bridal store is between $1,000 to $3,500.
Wow.
Yes,
well,
ma'am.
That's wonderful.
Gowns that are under $1,000 as well.
Well, that one right behind you is beautiful. It is just gorgeous. Nadeja, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this incredible event that's going to be taking place.
Thank you so much.
And the Brides of America event, once again, will be tomorrow. That's November 11th.
All right, this is Andrew Kraft with NewsNOW from Fox. We've been showing you a lot of the content our Fox sister stations have made today, and covering a wide array of topics, including the coronavirus, a lot of business news and financial tips, going into the holiday shopping, and a lot of election news with all those pending lawsuits the Trump campaign is serving to states in these battlegrounds with these really somewhat close margins that have Biden ahead. Biden is president-elect. That's according to the Fox News Decision Desk that projected that. So that's what we're going here with on News Now from Fox. We just wanted to take a quick look now at the nation's capital. And you're seeing it's quite foggy there. A little rainy on this late November night. It's about midnight Eastern there in D.C. And we'll have a busy few days for you to round out the week. We'll be bringing you all the updates out of the Trump administration, what they're doing as far as strategy going forward, and if and when the president will concede the election, seeing where these lawsuits end up in states like Nevada and Georgia and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. We're also following news out of the Biden-Harris transition team. Their work is well underway. They've announced volunteers and members working for the transition in a bunch of different sectors and areas to get ready to go in January. We learned earlier tonight that the former vice president and the president-elect announced who his would-be new chief of staff is, and that's Ron Klain. He used to be Vice President Biden's chief of staff when he worked in the West Wing as vice president. So that's just kind of a roundup of all things happening in D.C. And just stick here with News Now. We'll be bringing you a lot of political news, a lot of election-related news as those states and their electors start certifying results going into the next couple of weeks. And that's when the election is technically, finally, over. So we just wanted to thank you for watching. I'm Andrew Kraft. We have about an hour left of live coverage. We want to show you some more of our great content that a lot of our Fox affiliate stations produce throughout the day. We're not done with that yet. We're going to take a quick commercial break for some of you watching. It's 2 minutes, so stick with us here and be right back on News Now from Fox.
To get their children tested for coronavirus to keep schools open and avoid quarantines. Education and parenting expert Dr. Karen Arodian joins us now to talk about the dangers of this group mentality. It's good to have you with us. Thanks so much, Dr. Karen.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning.
Hey, I was honestly shocked to hear that this is a thing. It apparently is, though, in many places. So first, let's talk about, where we're seeing this and why this is happening in the first place.
Sure. It started in Davis County in Utah, more or less on the mom's Facebook pages, a don't ask, don't test, don't tell. More or less keeping your children at home, perhaps if they are being quarantined, but not testing them and not reporting so that potentially school could restart and athletics would not be interrupted.
That's wild. And it's kind of like, especially when this all started and even since then for so many families, we've all been in a tough spot trying to find childcare while working at the same time, while, doing everything else that needs to be done as well. And yes, it is tough. I just don't know that it ever crossed the mind of so many parents to take it this far. This seems so extreme, Karen.
Right. We can't get back into schools unless we have accountability and assurance that our community is healthy. And when we don't test, when we don't tell, then we can't go back into the schools and keep them functioning because we're putting our entire school community at risk. And then that comes back into our homes and into our other open communities. So this actual idea is not working. It's not something that we want to go forward with. We really want to be having great communication with our schools and letting them know if we are not feeling our best, going the step of getting tested and then creating this accountability.
Yeah, so well said. Let's talk about advice that you have for parents. I mean, the bottom line, moms and dads are stressed right now and have been for many months.
Absolutely. We are under a great deal of strain. But what we don't want to do is relay that to our children. We want to start every day with positivity, look for the sun in everything, take it a little bit at a time, and we're going to get through this. What we have established here that's different from before is a partnership now where parents are really connected to their schools, to their teachers, and we've become teachers ourselves. So at the end of this, we have 2 teachers working for our children. So let's keep that positive message in mind.
Yeah, and it's like, as we're headed into the holidays, you're going to be having perhaps more family coming over to your house, perhaps older family members as well. So, I mean, you would think that would serve as perhaps helping families not want to be doing this, I guess, trying to buck the system, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We want to make sure we keep our families healthy. And again, that is what's bleeding out into the community, right? That if we can maintain health within our homes, then potentially we can go back to our school homes. And when family does visit, again, most schools are going to have a strict period of time where they make sure families are on quarantine or working remotely, so we are not potentially bringing virus back into the school. So again, we want to go forward with safety first, health first, and then our entire community of school will reopen up to us.
Talking about the mom code this morning. Dr. Aronian, where can we find you online? Just some more information about you and really some more help on this.
Absolutely. Please find me at drkarenaronian.com. That's DrKarenAronian. Thank you.
Dr. Aronian, thanks so much for your time today. We sure do appreciate it. Good to visit with you.
Thank you.
He was, at one time, one of the most visible cardinals in the country. But as Theodore McCarrick was rising through the ranks of the Catholic Church, he was dogged by accusations of sexual misconduct with both adults and the minors.
Yes, so we're learning more about the defrocked cardinal after the release of a scathing new report that calls into question potential systemic failures within the Vatican that went all the way to the top. Joining Anita and I this morning with details from the National Catholic Reporter is executive editor Heidi Schlumpf. Heidi, good morning to you. Let's get right into this. Let's begin with Pope John Paul II. He's a saint in the eyes of the church, but he's also a man. And apparently he ignored warnings from within the upper echelons of the church. What can you tell us?
Yeah, good morning. This report is pretty damning, and much of the blame does end up falling on Pope John Paul II. So it seems that he was aware of at least the incidences with Theodore McCarrick that involved adults. So these were seminarians, so people who were in a position where the cardinal would and the archbishop at the time would have had power over them. There was an explicit letter from New York's Cardinal John O'Connor warning John Paul II not to elevate him to be cardinal, the Archbishop of Washington, where he would most likely become a cardinal. But John Paul II went against his advisor's suggestion and decided to promote him.
Was that because he had a personal friendship with him in the past?
Yeah, so there's speculation that because they had been known each other and that McCarrick had been doing some things for him that had been helpful on the international front. Also, some speculate that because of Pope John Paul II's history in Poland, where sometimes false accusations were made to discredit priests, he maybe wouldn't have believed him, but I don't find that very compelling.
And Heidi, also damning is the issue in the report that casts a shadow on a group of American bishops who perhaps intentionally withheld information about alleged sexual misconduct tied directly to McCarrick. That said, are we hearing about any fallout within the upper ranks of the church?
Yeah, so those bishops from New Jersey who were contacted, it seems that they did not give the complete information that they knew at the time. You know, what their intentions were, we can't say. Three of the four, it seems, did that. Now, all four of them are deceased. So there are few church leaders to face much discipline at this point. So, of course, even McCarrick, who's still alive, has been removed from the priesthood. However, Archbishop Vigano, who you may recall has been busy lately accusing Pope Francis of covering up for McCarrick, he does not come off well in the report. It seems, he was ambassador to the U.S. He was asked to do some investigating. and he did not do it.
Interesting. For our viewers that are not maybe familiar with some of the victims in this case, can you please tell them what they have endured and what this has been like for them?
Yeah, so in addition to the abuse, which as you mentioned in your lead-in, eventually we learned about abuse of minors as well. So sons of families that McCarrick had befriended. So this has been very painful, and I think the report in many ways sort of brings this all out. But it is a level of transparency that we haven't seen from the church at this high level ever, I don't think. Yesterday, Cardinal Cupich called it fearless in admitting the failures of the church leaders. The victim survivors who we've spoken to at NCR Online are saying they appreciate the report, but they want to see some action now.
You know, there was a stretch in recent years with, I saw a Gallup poll, Heidi, where people were, their faith and trust in priests had been restored in some pretty significant numbers. When a report comes out like this, are they concerned that this is going to be a step back for the Catholic Church?
Well, I think we're hoping that the transparency and honesty, this is a very comprehensive report. I finished reading it in the wee hours of the morning last night, all 450 pages of it. I think they're hoping that this level of transparency will help to restore trust in the church. Now, for John Paul II's legacy, I don't know what this will mean for him. I'm thinking of all the schools, even here in the Chicago area, and other places that are named for him. At the very least, there may be a step back to say, did we rush too quickly to sainthood for this man?
Executive Editor Heidi Schlumpf with the National Catholic Reporter. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
I've been in Twinbrook for 55 years, in this house 42 years.
Brigida Mulligan says she discovered her shattered front window Sunday morning.
$840 to repair. And I have a $1,000 deductible, so it's out of my pocket.
The Trump sign that was there is gone now. This is what her home looked like over the summer. She says back then, someone broke 2 of her windows, and then this. Her Ring camera caught a woman taking her Trump signs and flag, laughing the whole way back to the car.
I've never had something like this happen. It's the first time I have to tell you that I really wonder if I want to stay here. If this, it's just very disheartening.
Mulligan says her Ring camera did not capture the window smashing Saturday into Sunday. She did file a report with Montgomery County Police Sunday morning and shared what happened with neighbors on Facebook and Nextdoor.
Yeah, this is really terrible what happened to my neighbor, Brigida. And this is a quiet neighborhood.
They're very, very supportive, very sorry. They said it's all right for us to have political differences, but this is unacceptable.
One neighbor even brought her some treats.
Little things like that mean a lot.
She doesn't expect to find out who broke her window, but she is hoping.
Stealing signs is nothing, but literally taking your brick out in front of your doorstep and throwing it in the window and breaking it, I mean, that's pretty serious. It sure would make me feel better to know who it was.
If those phones are within 6 feet of each other for at least 15 minutes, and later on one of those phones is used to report a COVID diagnosis, that will trigger alerts to the phones that were within close contact.
Contact tracing for the Maryland Health Department, Dr. Catherine Feldman says Maryland's contact tracing app will be interoperable with DC's. That means no matter which place you live or work, if your phone counts you as a close contact to someone who later tests positive, you may get an alert. A reminder, this is technology that is based on random anonymous Bluetooth signals, and it's optional. A positive test is only logged into the system if you test positive, get a verification code from a contact tracer, and choose to tell the app.
And it really allows us to reach another group of individuals and make them aware of potential exposures and make sure they get the education and messaging they need in order to navigate that and know what to do next.
To get an idea of how useful this technology can be, we took a look at new numbers from the district. As of November 8th, 246,512 phones activated exposure notifications. That's a significant number, which could help health officials in the battle against COVID-19.
I've been in business here for 14 years. I started out of the back of my car, selling cheesecake to barbershop. You can just finish that up for me.
I came from Germantown, Maryland, man. I've been coming here for some years.
Peaches Restaurant is a Caribbean American fusion. Collard greens, curry chicken, brown stew chicken. If you don't like spice, jerk chicken is not the thing that you should have. It's a family style restaurant, so these are ready.
Yes.
During COVID, the restaurant is not producing as much in order to have a large staff.
DMV Black Restaurant Week is not about just promoting the restaurants. It's about sustaining the restaurants with partners like the Main Street and also giving the restaurants equipment that they need to be able to compete and stay in existence.
In life, humans generally enjoy three things: good sex, good food, and good salvation.
At 100 years young, retired Brigadier General Charles McGee still recounts detailed memories of his 30 years as a Tuskegee Airman. I spoke to him about his service during World War II and both the Korean and Vietnam Wars and his thoughts on this Veterans Day.
Let's kind of roll back a little bit. Tell me about the day you enlisted in the service.
Oh my goodness, that goes back a few years, but I had learned about the opportunity for blacks to be considered for aviation training, and although I had not aspired to be a pilot, I learned about it because the Army policy at the time was they can't use black pilots because they don't have black mechanics. So of the now called Tuskegee Airmen, the first was mechanics trained at the technical school, Chinook Field, Illinois, and I learned about it, but I took the pilot exam and a few months later got called to go directly into training as a cadet. I made the right decision because after my first flight I was hooked. I loved to be able to get in the air, loop, roll, and spin, come back, put your feet on the ground. I was hooked.
You were hooked. Tell me about all the different wars that you served in.
My first experience in World War II time frame, we'd call air superiority, because our mission was to help save American lives. Korea, completely different story. It was interdiction and ground support. And then my experience in Vietnam was intelligence gathering. We carried no weapons. Our defense was speed.
On this Veterans Day, what advice do you have for someone who may be saying, I think I want to join the military, who's considering joining the military?
You know, I'd certainly encourage them with that thought to go for it. It's important.
I'd like to thank you so much for your service, General McGee, for all you and all the Tuskegee Airmen that have done for your country and all you have given to all of us.
I appreciate that very much, and certainly we're proud of and wish the very best for those now serving and the future veterans, if you will, and certainly Godspeed for those who have served.
The general flew 409 combat missions in the Air Force. He took an honorary flight on his birthday last year and will celebrate 101 on December 7th. He says he still loves any opportunity he gets to fly.
On the dot right now, and this morning on Veterans Day, we continue to highlight our heroes here in the DMV. Army veteran Denise Ormsby owns the Spot on Mill Street in Occoquan, which supports local, veteran, and women-owned businesses in Prince William County. Her family's service goes back hundreds of years, in fact. A huge resume of service in her family, and Denise joins me now to share more about her story. I love that photo of you in uniform. I tweeted that out earlier this morning. I mean, service is in your DNA. Tell us about the Spot on Mill Street and if you're doing anything special today.
Of course, we're always doing something special here for our veterans. We open up with that premise in mind. I think we sent you the pictures of our heroes table. We honor all of our military, family military, first responders, doctors and nurses and stuff that's all going on with this crazy COVID.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Because, I mean, you were doing this type of giving well before the pandemic hit, and now you've also become this spot of support, especially during COVID. And then I know that on top of that, because I've seen your social media, you've also helped people collect and make service packages for military members overseas as well.
Yeah, we have been working on that. We actually are trying to work with Crown Royal because they're doing veteran packages for military members overseas. So we're putting some things together for them to send to special military members that are in places that may not otherwise get anything for the holidays.
I'd be interested in knowing, you know, I come from a family with a lot of veterans, and I remember when my sister retired, trying to find her way after the military.
I lost you a little bit.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now? You got me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay,
yes.
Great. So I just wanted to touch a little bit about life after the military. I come from a family of veterans as well, and I remember when my sister was going through that transition of trying to figure out what to do, what to follow as far as her passion was concerned, trying to make those decisions. What kind of advice would you offer to the veterans out there that are still trying to find their way?
You know what? Just keep moving forward. You'll eventually find something that you are successful at or something that you are passionate about. And that's kind of what has led me to where I am now. I've always been in some type of service for the community, or, you know, not a necessarily pay it forward type thing, but I've always done things that were important in the community and such, and working with the community. And I just happened to like bartending, and this came open. This kind of was my passion that I felt I went for.
Yeah, so tell me about the spot, because it's not just bartending, right? I'm looking at a delicious burger right now. You've been named in Northern Virginia Magazine 2020 Best of Nova when it comes to food. What else do you offer there at the spot?
You know, my husband likes to tease that we're a bar that serves, you know, breakfast, but we really are. We serve breakfast all day long. Like you said, you've posted some pictures of our food. We source locally. I work with small businesses, and a lot of them are actually veterans as well. We get our bread, our gluten-free breads from an Army veteran. We get our cupcakes and our cheesecakes and all those things from military veterans and their families. A lot of the things that we get, our popcorn is a big hit here.
I love it. That's what I was going to ask is what's the one must-have thing that you should order when you come to the spot on Mill Street?
The Spot Burger.
The Spot Burger?
Definitely the Spot Burger.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. And if you also want a dose of laughter, follow you on social media because you have quite the humor. I love it. Denise Ormsby, thank you so much for your service. Thanks for everything you're doing for the community. The owner of Spot on Mill Street in Occoquan. Make sure, everybody, that you stop by and say hi. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
And the time right now, 8:53.
Well, 3 Beaumont hospitals are reinstating visitor restrictions as COVID-19 spikes back here in Michigan and really across the U.S. Every day we're seeing the number of positive cases go up. So what does that mean? This morning, the doctor's in. We're speaking with Dr. Justin Skrinsky, internal medicine specialist at Beaumont Health. Doctor, thanks for being with us.
Good morning. My pleasure to be here.
Let's first talk about what you're seeing right there at Beaumont, and you work out of Beaumont Royal Oak, right, Doctor?
Yeah, that's correct. And we've seen our cases steadily increase over the past, I'd say about 2 months or so. So if you go back to maybe end of August, early September, that's the lowest we saw our cases since the summer. And then pretty much since then, you can draw a straight line up, and that's where we are today.
Okay, so we are also, though, seeing, it seems like doctors like you are able to treat COVID patients better because it seems like the cases are less serious. Is that true?
Yeah, so that's actually something we've been discussing a lot. So if you look at the data, hospitalized patients are doing much, much better than they did before, which is clearly excellent news. It's the same disease, so people are still getting sick, but we have a lot of, we have a couple medications which seem to be having a very good effect. Also, in terms of the experience we've had over the past several months, even the non-medical things that we do in terms of positioning our patients, how we oxygenate them, there's a lot of strategies that we have that we're intervening early, they're giving us better outcomes, but people are still getting as sick.
So, Doctor, some of the conversations you hear at kitchen tables, and I'm sure you've heard this too, is people saying it seems like this virus has mutated where it's not as severe as it once was back in March. It's a less severe version of COVID-19. You're saying that that may not be true.
As far as we can tell, it seems to be the same virus. And actually, that's a conversation that we've had here at the hospital. We have pretty frequent meetings where we all touch base and we discuss the latest news and developments. But as far as we understand, it's the same virus. And again, if left unchecked, it's just as serious as it was, let's say, back in March and April. People are having better outcomes, though. Again, hopefully it's because of things that we're doing and advances that we've made. But again, if you were just to leave this unchecked, I think you'd see the same deadly results that you saw months ago.
Are you still intubating patients using ventilators, or have we really gotten away from that?
If they need it, and fortunately that has decreased dramatically as well. Again, I'd like to credit some of the early interventions that we're able to do. So again, we're seeing patients who become very ill. They get that sort of inflammatory picture that we've talked about, that viral pneumonia, and they are kind of getting up to that edge. But fortunately, we're not seeing a lot of them fall over to the point that they do need intubation.
Doctor, what's working as far as treatment goes when you do see somebody who needs to be hospitalized, and who does need to be hospitalized? What kind of patients are you seeing?
Right, and again, very similar to what we saw back in the spring. So it's still the respiratory issues that are getting people. So that viral pneumonia. So you've got your patients that come in, severe shortness of breath, low oxygen. Those are still the things that are really hazardous and potentially lethal to people. The couple medications that we use most frequently, steroids, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about that. Dexamethasone is the one we use very commonly. That's got a lot of data behind it right now. The other medication that we use as well is called remdesivir. That's an antiviral medication. And again, there's studies that show that one's beneficial too. But those are the two medications we're using. Other than that, though, we're much better in terms of mobilizing people, positioning them. People have heard about proning, where we have our patients on their stomach. That seems to help with oxygen as well. So there's a lot of sort of non-medical things that we've learned as well to do with our patients to keep their oxygen levels up.
How do you feel going into the cold and flu season, Doctor? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you worried?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, and fortunately, the same measures in the population help to prevent coronavirus. So things like masks, distancing, which are still very essential, even more so now that people are going to be inside over the colder months and getting to the holidays. Fortunately, those measures also help to prevent other communicable diseases like influenza, colds, things like that. So if people are very good about the coronavirus measures, hopefully that'll also take the edge off the flu season this year.
All right, Doctor, let's bring in Jay and Amy, who have questions for you as well. Jay?
Here we are. Okay, Doc. My question is just about numbers. As I look into this website, our Michigan website here, over 223,000 cases, 162,000 of the cases since this all started, people under the age of 70. And then you look at the deaths, and one death is a death too many. 7,724. 6,700 of those deaths are people over 60. As a guy with parents in their 70s, you really, really worry about people over the age of 60, and especially when you got over 5,000 of those people over the age of 70. What is it that our older family and friends here in Michigan need to know about this differently than a lot of the younger people are getting this, and that's it, and they're done. But our older population is really struggling with it.
I think that's a great question. It gets to a lot of issues going on right now. So again, just as you mentioned, that's an at-risk population. So our older patients, our patients with chronic illness, those are the patients that are still very much at risk. And in terms of what I see in the hospital, obviously that's a pretty small sample size. But as you mentioned, the data that we see statewide, it's showing that it's our older patients who are most at risk. We got to be really careful moving forward because our younger people can be asymptomatic or they can have very mild symptoms. So you think about instances like Thanksgiving or Christmas, where you have people coming back from school, you have younger people that are going to be in contact with older family members. It's very possible for somebody who's either has very mild symptoms or no symptoms to transmit it to someone who could potentially have a lethal disease. Yeah. In the community, we still see that breakdown where it seems like, again, it is the older people that are getting sick. A lot of the numbers that we have right now, so you see those huge positive test numbers that we're having in the state, that's because a lot of these people are in the younger groups. So we have these ballooning numbers, but in terms of the hospitalizations, again, we are seeing those increase, but that is in our older population.
Right.
All right, Doctor, we're almost out of time, but I do have a question. A shocking report came out, well, shocking to me with the numbers about mental illness after having COVID-19. It's a rather large percentage of people and other physical issues as well. Even if you don't have really bad symptoms, that's a major concern.
That's a very major concern. And I'm sure you've heard the term long hauler, but it's people with COVID who have these lingering symptoms. And as you mentioned, that's a huge one. Depression, and not even just necessarily the cause directly from the virus, but just the circumstances. If you are hospitalized, it's a very isolating experience. If you're sick, it's a very frightening experience. Depression, we see fatigue, we see shortness of breath, weakness. Those things can be lingering symptoms for months. And again, we think about these waves of illness. One of these waves might indeed be sort of these chronic illnesses caused by COVID infections.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much. We're going to continue this conversation. Yes, the doctor is in this morning. Michigan continuing to see a growing number of COVID-19 cases over the past few weeks, especially concerning as it gets colder outside. We begin to go inside more, and we've got the holiday season ahead of us. So let's get some questions answered. The doctor's in this morning. Dr. Justin Skrinsky, internal medicine specialist at Beaumont Health. Doctor, thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
My pleasure to join you.
The first, I just want to start with a viewer question, and then I do want to talk to you about vaccines and some other business. But Heather writes, I was exposed to someone with COVID 4 days ago. If I test negative today, am I clear, or could I test positive later on? And first, doctor, I would also like you to explain what being exposed means.
Right. So being exposed means being in proximity, unprotected proximity to somebody with COVID for a total of 15 minutes or more. And again, that's if you're in close proximity within 6 feet, no barriers such as masks and so forth. Again, that definition of exposure gets kind of fuzzy because, people who have contact with other people, but let's say you're inside, let's say you're close together, let's say it's prolonged, but people are wearing masks. Again, there are mitigating circumstances, but again, if you look at kind of what the CDC is going to tell you, it's that close proximity for 15 minutes or more. So to answer the viewer's question, if you test negative, the CDC is still recommending, if you have had this confirmed exposure, to still self-quarantine for the 14 days, even if you do test negative. Now, in terms of can you test positive later, kind of depends on the test that you get. So depending on the type of swab that you get, sometimes there are false negatives, depending on how it's done even. And that's why we're recommending to err on the side of caution and to still exercise the 14 days.
Doctor, 14 days seems extreme to me, and I only say that I want everyone to be safe, but it seems as we're trying to navigate this pandemic and we're also trying to live our lives, why do we have to quarantine for 14 days?
It is a long time. And again, we have to recommend what's sort of medically best. And that doesn't speak to what's practically best, doesn't speak to what's easiest. And again, sometimes it's a big ask. So the reason why it's 14 days is if you're looking at somebody and you're doing swabs, not the normal swabs that used to diagnose it, but would call viral culture. So basically, can you actually grow live contagious virus out of somebody? These are not the normal tests that you get, let's say, if you just go and get tested to see if you have COVID. It's not telling you if the virus is actually contagious. What we're finding is that after 14 days, over 90%, so something like 95% of people no longer have any live virus. So at that point, given those percentages, we feel comfortable saying that the vast majority of people are no longer contagious, and that's the rationale for the 14 days.
Dave says, we're all wearing masks, but the pandemic is growing. So can you explain that, doctor? The more mask wearing you see, the more the numbers are going up.
Right, and unfortunately, that's in some of the sectors where we see the virus really growing are sectors where you have a lot of people in close proximity who perhaps aren't wearing masks as well. We're deeply grateful for all the things that people have been doing, the mask wearing, the distancing, a lot of sacrifices that the community has been making. And believe me, on our end, we're very deeply grateful. But if you look at the really ballooning numbers that we have right now, one of the big sectors is younger people. And younger people are not going to get as sick from the virus, which is why you see again, we're having, 5,000, 6,000 new cases a day. People are saying, well, we're having more new cases than we did back in April. So where are the sick people? One of the reasons is that it's a much younger population that's getting sick now. So they're not going to necessarily need hospitalization. But you think about social situations, you think about college campuses, you think about schools, that sort of thing, even sports. You're going to get a lot of people in close proximity to each other. And unfortunately, not the age group that's necessarily going to be the best about mask wearing.
I have a question about vitamin D, doctor. Can you talk about that? How does low vitamin D impact a person's recovery? Do you know anything about the research into this vitamin D connection?
Yeah, so there's some equivocal research right now. I can tell you that in terms of the inpatient treatment that we're doing here at Beaumont, vitamin D is not part of that. Obviously, we try and optimize that regardless, but it's still sort of an area that needs more exploration.
Let me ask you about vaccines real quick, and then I'm going to bring Derek in with his question, Doctor. I know you guys are testing out a vaccine at Beaumont. Also, this Pfizer news, it got a lot of attention, a lot of excitement. Where do we stand when it comes to vaccines?
Yes, the Pfizer announcement was very heartening. They were saying that they have something like a 90% effectiveness rate. And again, that's comparing people who got this experimental Pfizer vaccine, which is in the final phase of clinical trials, compared to those who got just placebo. So those who got the virus, it seemed, again, to have a 90% effectiveness rating in terms of preventing COVID. So very, very heartening news. Again, these are still in the final phases. So it's not to say that this thing is by any means ready to ship. It's one more tool that we have, just like masks are a tool, just like distancing is a tool. So no silver bullet for this thing. But if we had a vaccine, and especially if we can show that it's safe, we can show that it works, and we can do enough education that people feel comfortable taking it, then that would go a long way.
Doctor, I'm going to ask you one more question, then Derek's here too. For Thanksgiving, what are you doing? What are you recommending?
Yeah. That's a really tricky one. Personally, it's just going to be probably me and just my immediate family. It's a very difficult situation. Obviously, we have to recommend that everybody err on the side of maximal caution. As doctors, as healthcare workers, that's what we have to tell you guys to do. I leave it to everybody to exercise their best discretion, but especially if you have older people, if you have at-risk people with chronic illnesses in the home, just think really, really hard about trying to keep those individuals safe.
Derek?
Yeah, I got a quick question, Doc, about contact tracing. So say, hypothetically, your wife is exposed to it at work. She gets sent home for 14 days. Does the whole house have to quarantine for 14 days, or does it just last for that person that was exposed?
Yeah, those situations get a bit sticky. So right now, it would be the individual who had the potential direct exposure. Now, again, if that person ended up testing positive, for instance, then now you have to consider everyone in the household to be exposed.
Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle that we're solving, right, Doctor? Well, Dr. Justin Skrinsky, we appreciate you and all the hard work that you're doing and all the information. It is so valuable to us. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Mike Srigliano with Penn Medicine joining us out of Philadelphia. Good to see you, Dr. Mike.
Always a pleasure, Thomas.
Looking at the numbers once again, it's clear we're not headed in the right direction here. Do you see another lockdown or a total lockdown on the table?
I'll tell you, Thomas, I think by numbers, I'm worried, but I don't see another lockdown coming. It just can't happen. I think it's going to be a very careful process in terms of what changes and what doesn't. If you look at Governor Murphy in New Jersey, he set limits on the amount of hours that a restaurant can stay open. The theory there is that if someone is at a restaurant after 10 p.m., they might tend to have maybe more drinks, let their guard down, get more likely to have problems, and maybe let their guard down. So for that reason, I think it's going to be a very careful and methodical approach to this rather than just shutting everything down. Now, if we get to the point where it is widespread, and remember, Thomas, in 1918, the second wave was much more deadly than the first wave. And so time will tell. But I got to tell you, as someone in the front lines, it's a little bit frightening. And I haven't been frightened in a while. Things were going better. We were getting kind of used to the whole concept. But this week, I must say, I've had one death in my practice, as well as a significant uptick in the number of patients with COVID-19.
Yeah, I think it is concerning. I mean, I think that's why we're seeing more and more of these restrictions. Do you think it's time to rethink sending children back into the classroom full time, Dr. Mike?
Well, I have one child who is like me, a little bit on the nervous side. He elected to stay virtual the whole time. My daughter, however, is in a hybrid model. As we've seen in several school districts, like in Philadelphia, they've decided they're not going to come back. They're going to stay virtual. If the numbers keep going the way they are, I cannot see how any school district can remain even in a hybrid situation. It's very risky business.
The CDC, and we talk about the holidays here and trying to see family members. I know they just posted its most specific guidance yet on Thanksgiving. What are we learning?
Well, the Centers for Disease Control has listed high-risk activities, lower-risk activities. And when it comes down to it, if you look at all the recommendations and you distill it down, one, you want to limit the number of people that are together. You want to make sure and try to have everyone outdoors rather than indoors. You don't want to share food. Much of these recommendations are similar to recommendations that we talked about when it was the summertime and picnics were going on. You want to make sure if you have someone at high risk, you don't want to have them exposed to family members. And one of the things that really troubles me and worries me are college kids coming home from college. They've traveled in many cases and they have been out in the world. You bring them home and they're going to want to see their friends locally, and they are bringing the outside world in. And if you have a loved one, grandmom, or someone who is at high risk, you have to be very, very careful about that. That's basically what the guidelines are saying. Outdoor dining, make sure that you are outside as much as possible. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. But look, folks, this is not going to be like any Thanksgiving that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. No one has gone through this. It's not going to be the way it normally is.
And this goes with a renewed warning from doctors across the country that their patients simply aren't shaking their symptoms as quickly, that many are experiencing these symptoms months after infection.
Well, we call them long haulers. That's the term that many people use. And what we're seeing is that even after you get through the initial insult of this viral infection, it can have long-lasting effects. It can cause brain fog. It can cause depression. It can cause significant problems with the body in terms of cough. What I'm doing with my own patients after they have been diagnosed with COVID-19, I follow them very carefully. I make sure that they have frequent follow-ups. If they have a continued cough, I check pulmonary function tests. Those are tests to make sure that they are not developing some kind of lung disease from fibrosis, from inflammation. I'm also making sure that their EKG, their heart tests are okay, because we know that this virus attacks the heart in some cases. And I'm making sure that there are no signs of depression, because clinical depression and brain infection is part of this. So we have to watch them very, very carefully.
Is this why we're seeing 1 in 11 COVID patients being readmitted to the hospital, according to a new CDC study?
Well, I think in people, and this study, by the way, looked at people being readmitted. The average time for readmission was 8 days. And these were mainly older folks and people with underlying conditions. And so, look, we want to get people out of the hospital, especially if we start seeing a surge. In my own hospital, we have started reconverting units back to COVID units because of the uptick in patients. Now we have the problem that we were at almost full capacity with regular patients, because remember, for a couple of months there, we weren't doing any routine surgeries, heart bypass, stuff like that was put on hold. Now we have the added burden of all of those patients, but also this rising number. So readmissions are going to be something that inpatient doctors and healthcare administrators are going to have to really think about, because this number, 1 in 11, is not something to take lightly. It's a significant number.
Yeah, and going back to the patients who aren't shaking these symptoms after months after initial infection, you don't necessarily see this with influenza. What is this virus doing to the body compared to the flu? Do we know?
This is a whole new ballgame. This is a virus that we have not seen. That's why originally it was called the novel coronavirus, novel meaning new. And so this is a new entity. And we don't know, frankly. We know for a fact that viruses can cause damage to the heart. Other viruses, I remember when I was a resident dealing with patients that needed heart transplants because they had a viral cardiomyopathy. That means that the virus, and it wasn't COVID back then, it was other viruses that damaged the heart to the point where they needed a heart transplant. So viruses can play havoc with the body, and time will tell. We will have to see the long-term ramifications of this. Remember, back in 1918, we didn't have the record keeping. We didn't have computer technology. So we don't know basically what happened then. It may have been the same way, although it was a different virus. Time will tell, Thomas.
Yeah, and we're learning so much more as time goes on. The Journal of Physics of Fluids shows the droplets, we often talk about the droplets, can travel and linger beyond 6 feet, Dr. Mike.
Well, this has been a point of contention for months and months. Is it reasonable to say 6 feet? Is it reasonable to say that wearing a mask reduces the spread? These are things that people have debated. So let's go over them. Number one, wearing a mask is essential. And the studies show and science shows that it is critical to reducing the amount of travel of both droplets and aerosolized viral particles. Number one. Number two, we know for a fact, and many scientists back this up, that the virus and viral particles can be aerosolized and travel great distances. So this new information is not all that new. Thirdly, there was recently a study that if someone coughs and you are shorter than the person that coughs, you are at higher risk because of the trajectory of those droplets. Gravity makes those droplets, even the bigger ones, tend to go down. And so if you're shorter and someone coughs, you're at higher risk. These are all the physics aspects of droplet technology. Fascinating stuff, but frightening. And so you must wear a mask. That's the bottom line.
On that note, our daily reminder, Dr. Mike, on staying safe.
Thomas, we're not going in a good place. We are seeing an uptick in numbers. I'm seeing it in my own practice. And we have been very good in this tri-state area where I work with numbers being quite low. What's happening, I think, is that people are getting tired and colder weather, people are getting indoors, and people are letting their guard down. This is an endurance race. We must stay the course, wear a mask, good hands hygiene, and social distance. And with Thanksgiving coming, we must be very, very careful.
Yeah, got to stay focused. Dr. Mike Sirigliano with Penn Medicine out of Philly. Good to see you, Dr. Mike.
Always a pleasure, my friend Thomas.
All right, and that was the end of a lot of our Fox affiliate content that we've been showing you throughout the evening here. It's about 10 minutes to 11 p.m. Here, Mountain Time in Phoenix, Arizona, almost 1 a.m. there, Eastern Time, in the nation's capital. You can see dark there, foggy a little bit on that cold, rainy November day. Today was Veterans Day, and we want to start our overnight playlist for you from the appearances the president made and the president-elect to honor our nation's heroes today on this Veterans Day. So we're going to play out their visits and their arrivals. President Trump was at Arlington National Cemetery today with Vice President Mike Pence and his cabinet secretary who heads up Veterans Affairs, at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And Joe Biden, the president-elect, and his wife Jill were at a memorial for Korean War veterans in Philadelphia. So we're going to start that off with the playlist and then go into some of our previously recorded content we showed you throughout the day today. And we'll see you right back here on News Now from Fox, bright and early on the East Coast from our Orlando bureau. And we'll take it from there on Thursday, tomorrow. So thanks for watching tonight. I'm Andrew Kraft once again, and this is News Now from Fox.